Welcome to the March 8th, 2021 Board of Education meeting. Let me just read this very quickly. Governor Pritzker recently extended the disaster declaration related to the COVID-19 pandemic for all Illinois counties and extending the ability of public bodies to hold virtual meetings in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. Can we have a roll call, please?
Livingston.
Here.
Munsell.
Here.
Parsons.
Here.
Rolowitz.
Here.
Jeterich.
Here.
Savage Williams.
Here. Thank you. All right. The first item on the agenda is written communication. Dr. Davis, do we have any written communication?
Yes. This afternoon, board members received in PDF form written communication from Teachers Council to the ETHS School Board.
Thank you. All right. Board members received that. All right. The next item is items for information. And we're going to start with student well-being and mental health update.
Board, good evening. We have Taya Kinsey here with us this evening. She's our Associate Principal for Student Services and is probably the best spokesperson about student well-being and mental health issues of any school person anywhere. And so we're always glad when Taya can join us and give the board an update. Taya, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm sure that after you've made your presentation, board members will have some discussion.
All right, well, thank you very much. So I have screen share capacity. We are also aware, I'll go ahead and say this, that in terms of well-being, our hope is not that everyone leaves at midnight or 1 in the morning. And given that there's a lot of public comment, we're keeping that in mind. So I know that I provided an extensive well-being report that reflects both student services and our entire school. And so Dr. Campbell and I are going to present from both the school-wide perspective as well as reflections on student services, but we're going to work really hard to abbreviate that. We have a lot to say, but we're going to hit some highlights here. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share screen here and get us started. All right, so here we are. We just really wanted to emphasize the tremendous work that our entire school is doing. So this board report is intended to reflect on 2019 and 2020 and really focus on the culture of care and the support and belonging and the Wildcat well-being that we're focused on. We have provided several updates throughout this year around this school year of 2020-2021. We're going to continue to provide a few updates along those lines. We wanted to reflect on our 5 essentials and just the tremendous responsivity that our staff has showed, really looking at 94% of our students report feeling safe and comfortable, 92% really feel treated with respect by teachers. And, you know, it shows in the faces of our students, but it also shows in the faces of the tremendous work that our staff do throughout our entire school all year long.
And I'll just add that our daily average attendance is 93%. And for the first semester during the pandemic, it was 96.8%. We're very pleased with those numbers. And also looking at 4 years of the class of 2020, we see that the mean attendance rate for the class of 2020 was 92%. We're excited about that too. Our kids love to come to school.
And we love having them in school, even when it's a reflection of being outside of school, but through learning experiences. And that's what this outcome measure reflects on chronic absenteeism. which actually encapsulates all the experiential learning that students are doing when they're offsite, but they're being coded in a different way. So we're happy about those pieces too. We have spent a lot of time this school year in particular thinking about how we're doing interventions a little differently. But going back to last school year, part of what we wanted to highlight was 89% of students say that teachers work hard to make sure students stay in school. And that is absolutely true all the time. And this year, no more true words have been spoken. So our staff, our teachers, 100 home visits have been conducted thus far by our truancy officer and members of student support teams. Our outreach callers, some of whom have been reallocated from different roles during the school year, have spent time making over 8,000 phone calls for interventions to engage, help students stay on track. And in the line of servant leadership, over 1,000 phone calls by leaders and support staff before school even started at the beginning of the year to really set up for success, and then also during second quarter to continue to identify needs. And in terms of our four-year graduation rate, we're really pleased that we continue to have high numbers, as you all can see here. We believe that attendance leads to all of these things. As you all know, we've shifted our focus from strictly focusing on not wanting to have any truant students to holding on to our students, trying to reduce our truancy rate at the same time that we're focused on increasing our graduation rate, which we have seen. And it also reflects in what our students say. 92% of students report that high school is preparation for the future. And we also want to celebrate that 201 students already have graduated as a result of our alt school program since 2015.
And as you heard in the previous board meeting, our student activities, students who are participating in extracurricular activities, athletics, co-curricular activities, 75% of students did one. But I want to note that what I did not get a chance to say, or we didn't get a chance to share in that meeting, was that, we've been hearing from the board for quite a bit of time, hearing one number, putting it all together. And so we had a few meetings last year where we knew we wanted to better capture what was happening. And that number, this 75% number, only includes extracurricular, co-curriculars, and student activities. It does not include the summits. It does not include games. It does not include student volunteers. We had planned to do all of that, but then we got impacted by COVID and we had to leave. And so this number is, I bet, is going to improve significantly as we look at our methodology and begin to capture what we know is happening in this school. So I'm just glad we got another opportunity to share with this board that this number is a good start, but we're not finished yet. I'd also like to add with that our in-person experiences that we had begun to start, you can just see a picture of there that our band kids and our labs and a number of things that we currently have going on at ETHS, we had a number of them happen today, are also happening in response to the well-being of our students. It's also to note on this slide, we talk about behavior and referrals, that 82% of all students earned no more than one referral, and that 80% of all students earned 0 referrals, which is really important for us to know. And you see the other data that's on there on the slide. But for those students who are have a little bit of recidivism, high recidivism in the dean's office, or at least are being referred, we're exploring a new, call it more progressive way to begin to address the needs of those kids. But those are good numbers. And I'd also continue to add that we are holding on to the values that of our students up until even past the graduation. And so you see that, we're very much proud of our alums and those who are, viewed here on the screen, Lena Waith and Megan Tui and so many others. But, we share that with our seniors, and we share that wild kid spirit that they too can also be a part of something great and define that as they would want to define that. And so we're really excited for looking at our post-secondary options and looking at also what it means to be a wild kid, preparing them for the world, which a lot of wild kids have just taken by storm.
As we think about that very thing that Marcus is talking about, taking by storm, that culture of care that we know is started by staff, but it's also started by students. And so that's a tremendous way that we are giving students agency, both at ETHS and all the changes they're making in the world. So one of the changes that we wanted to celebrate was that 94% of all of our students last school year maintained or increased their GPA. And we love the voices, again, of our students saying, you know what, 95% really say teachers expect them to do their best and that teachers expect everyone to work hard. So we continue to really celebrate those pieces. And you can see highlighted here the faces and the actions of so many of our students and continuing our culture of care, including Willie the Wildcat featured here, part of the culture of care. We wanted to highlight more of our students' faces, but also the ways that our students impact our world and that culture of care. You can see in the top left corner, the reflections of "you are loved, we care." Those were designed by students last school year. It was their idea when we were creating food bags right at the beginning of the pandemic to hand out to families and to students, that they needed more than just to hand out food. We needed to send messages of love and care and concern. So not only did we provide, resources and community information, we also, students wrote handwritten notes that way, just more of a reflection of that culture of care. So again, we're going to briefly highlight some of these pieces in terms of our mental health and well-being survey. What we're seeing is, we know that our students have expressed their needs. We see that 53% of students have some anxiety or stress that impacted them for 6 or more days in the past 30 days after taking this, and 27% feel that way for 2 weeks. We also see that students are accessing resources. 30% report accessing some type of support. And the top pieces of those, and you'll hear some resounding pieces of this, parents and guardians, adult family members, in addition to ETHS mental health staff and outside therapists. So we have really high numbers also of students using outside supports as well as inside supports, some of whom use both supports. And again, feeling connected, we're really glad that 86% of students report feeling a sense of belonging, and that students report even if they feel any concern about personal safety, whether that's outside in the community or inside ETHS, they reach out to parents and guardians, ETHS mental health staff, and mental health staff in the community, ETHS staff members, and police and SROs. In terms of our well-being survey, we also wanted to highlight a few additional pieces, which is that 91, there's a difference here between perception and use. So 91% of our students believe that 11 to 100% used cannabis in the last 30 days. However, 73% of students reported not having used cannabis in the last 30 days at all. Again, the difference between perception and use, 58% of students believe that 11 to 100% of students use someone else's prescription drugs in the last 30 days, but 96% reported not having used someone else's prescription drugs at all in the 30 days before. So these are important differences. We also wanted to highlight 83% of students reported never or rarely having any alcoholic beverages in the last 30 days, and 75% of students, this is the importance of family communication, reported that their family communicate clear rules about not allowing alcohol or drugs. And 72% of students also reported that they had not used any. So there's some parallels there in terms of expectations and not using. We also know the importance of believability and the trustworthiness of parents and guardians, adult family members, wellness teachers, ETHS nurses and mental health staff, and our coaches and sponsors are some of the top folks that students look to in terms of understanding and believing what is said about drugs and alcohol. In terms of our substance use, we have our student assistance program. We had definitely seen an increase in social work referrals, and we responded to that with 2 new social work positions this school year. We have over 50 mental health groups, many individual supports, crisis intervention, and we continue to see both in our health services, our social work, our counseling spaces, our access of resources definitely reflect our student enrollment by race. Again, we're not going to get into too many details. We're trying to give you some highlights as we're going along here. You can see some additional information in terms of number of visits to health services, our 504 plans increasing, our student support team meetings to problem solve. It's also important to note last year, 116 students participated in our PHP, our pre and post hospitalization program, following a psychiatric or inpatient or outpatient hospitalization. This year, the same number when we compare first semester of this year, 2021, with last year, 2020, first semester numbers were actually the same. And we also wanted to note we continue to support teen parents and focus on our Acknowledge, Care, Tell. We also wanted to highlight briefly, one of the things that we've seen is the tremendous work that our staff and our teachers specifically about the ways that they show care. Not just the act of saying we care, but how they're checking in and all the ways that they're asking about life outside of school and how students are doing emotionally makes a difference. As we instituted emotion identification regulation curriculum for all students in our entire school, and we've been doing screenings throughout the year, we see that over 55% of students reported that teachers are checking in. They're asking how they're doing emotionally, and it makes an impact with lower depression levels. We also have seen that when students are engaging in the curriculum and the regulation activities for emotional content, that we see a decreased number of students who would have a more likely depressive, major depressive disorder. As we're looking at ICAPs, our individual career and academic plans, we continue to see tremendous work being done for post-high school planning. 85% of our seniors last year planned to attend a 2 or 4 year college. The teaming that we're doing, whether that's around School Links as our new college and career platform, our LGBTQ plus post-secondary resources being further developed, as well as all of our partnership with Hvac and Oakton and Youth Job Center, and a development of variety of programming, including our career pathways. We couldn't resist to show some of our staff because in order to support students, we support our staff too, and that's a critical piece for us. The other pieces, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Kimball.
It's okay.
I was getting excited.
That's all right. So building social emotional competencies for staff and students is critical. And in no other time has it been really more important and apparent than right now. And grief and loss have been central themes for all of us in the pandemic and these continued examples of racism and deaths in our country, of other people in the country, of our former students, have really impacted us all. The pain is profound, and we've worked to respond to this pain and to this grief, to this loss, both inside the classroom and outside the classroom. And we work through that with our crisis care team as we grieve. And there's still a sense of loss, and we have renewed senses of loss as this pandemic continues to linger on. And so the foundation for well-being connection to student achievement is multifaceted, and we're working really, really hard. And it's going to be really important when we get back to that we continue to embed like SEL and equity in everything that we do. Living through a pandemic, surviving a pandemic, and living through under the constant pressure of racism and microaggressions and things of that nature, it is important that SEL is embedded and that we're building strength and resiliency with our students. we're also working to connect the dots to so much. And a lot of what you're hearing tonight is just, it's the big, I call them the big rocks, and it is a bird's eye view, but we're trying to connect the dots as far as, culture and climate through all of the things that you see on the screen. It is important for us to recognize and to name the things of what we are, what we're working through, how we're processing it all, and how we're all trying to make it work together. This is really a school-wide comprehensive approach. It doesn't just rely on the counselors and the social workers. It is all of us together every single day. And that also happens through some programs that we're working through at night. And this is our family evening programming with our Family Talk series and our college and career planning. You can see some of the topics that we've done with our family talk and some of the groups that we run with kids. These things are particular to counselors and social workers and the work that in the psychs that's happening in student services and in special ed, but it's still really a comprehensive effort by the whole school. So why are we here? And that is to keep students, help us to be centered on our why. Why do we choose to go into education? Why do we do the things that we do? It is the students that drive me. I know they drive the administrative team, and they drive our faculty and our staff. And so they keep us grounded. It has been very difficult to be in this building every day and not see their bright and smiley faces and not to see the staff. And so that's also a sense of loss, but we know that they're there, right? We know that they're also, building strength and resiliency and doing the best that they can. And they're looking for us for leadership, continued leadership and guidance as we look back to them. And I say this in my closing, and that is that, the Student of the Month recognition has been so important for me and for the team, because we get to hear all of the important things that students are doing that lift the spirits of their teachers and lift the spirits of staff. And when you get to hear all of those narratives and how students are showing up, how freshmen are showing up, and how seniors are showing up, it is really why we do the things that we do, because they are the why for why we show up every single day and work as hard as we do. And I want to make sure that they know that, and that the public and the community knows that we work hard for our students every single day. Ty?
Thank you. We work hard for them, and we do believe, I think our students believe that well-being belongs to all of us. Our staff believe that. And so these are some final closing examples about how that's meaningful while we're at ETHS, even in the midst of a pandemic, in midst of a year plus of going through this, of also the amount of racial injustices that continue to occur across our country. And our students, I think we see our commitment now more than ever to how are we engaging in well-being with each other? How are we lifting and changing racism that continues to occur across our nation? So we are so proud of our students, and we're tremendously proud of the ways that this manifests through our staff too. So we want to thank you. Again, these were some brief highlights. So we tried to keep this to a minimum, but I just want to say, quote a staff member, actually, Dean King has been talking a lot about our campaign of hope. I believe that's what our culture of care is about. And like Dr. Campbell said, the resilience that everyone is showing. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Wow. And thank you for sending the report, the long report. Lots of really good information there, and elaborating on much of what you said. So many people, as you know, are really concerned, as are we, about how kids are doing. How are our students doing? So certainly concerned about how we're doing academically, how they're doing academically, but emotionally, socially emotional, knowing that, this is hard on everybody, but imagine how difficult it would be on an adolescent, their year, many of them, seniors, freshmen, and of course sophomores and juniors as well, but I think particularly about the seniors and the freshmen. You know, they don't get this year back. So I really appreciate looking at those numbers. I've been staring at them. The visuals really helped me in the report. That was really, really helpful, and just really trying to get a handle on how they're doing. I think the work reaching out to students is amazing. The phone calls, just really the extent to which our staff is reaching out has just been just phenomenal. And I know that we'll be talking about this year for many years down the road, but you know, I really is so important for students to know how much they're cared for, and they may not know it right now because for many reasons they can't express it, or things aren't the way they would like it to be. Our world has just really been placed in an upheaval this year. So, but I really want to thank you, Taya and Marcus, and your staff, and the counselors and the social workers. And like you said, it's really the village. It's everybody doing their part, and all the people who have been, all the people who've been reaching out. It's just been great. We appreciate that. We see that. Pat.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Taya. I'm always, I have sort of a mixed feeling about this report. I always, it makes me sad to see how much our students need help, but it always makes me happy that every year the list of supports is longer than the previous year. And to me, that shows creativity and sensitivity, and just that constant attention and intention to make sure that each of our students is seen and heard and supported in whatever way that is needed. And so thank you for all the work you did for just this report, but certainly that all the work you and so many others do to make that possible. Two sort of questions. One is related specifically that you've learned so much over the last year because the world has been in this crazy time. And I'm wondering if you could give an example or two of something you've learned that you're going to bring in, God willing, we're in regular old times and we go to schools and buildings without masks and gloves and all that. So, you know, what is maybe an example or two that you're going to bring forward into normal times? And then the other piece is I think I ask this every year is, what more do you need? Because it feels like you grow the program, you grow the supports all the time, but is there more you need? Do you need more people? Do you need more training? What are some of the things that you see going forward that you need in order to keep growing these supports so that all of our students are well supported? And I know you're doing a great job with that now, but the need continues to grow.
Well, thank you for all that. I mean, I truly do believe this is about over 600 staff who are working together in conjunction with students. So, you know, I'm very, very always impressed with our staff. So in terms of your question, normal times, can't wait for those times and to be all together again. When we think about some of the things that have been working, we actually spent some time, particularly when we started kind of thinking about, well, okay, as leaders, we're going to jump in and make over, you know, just in August alone, before school started, over 300 calls to students who we were concerned about, whether it was around attendance or social emotional, or let's confirm their Wi-Fi is on, let's confirm we had some reason to have concerns, so we wanted to reach out. And some of that was about grades, some of that was about attendance. And we've all said to each other, I don't know what we need to do to make it happen, but we want to continue some of those kinds of actions and not have that act of setting kids up for success before the school year even starts be a one-time drop in the bucket. So that's an example of things that are working. I saw Dr. Campbell unmute. I think he's going to add something here. Is that right?
I am. It's going to be quick.
Yeah.
Something else that we learned, and this is pre-pandemic, Pat, and that is that we know we need a more comprehensive, therapeutic, progressive approach to discipline. And so Dr. Witherspoon and I had a very clear, frank, hour-long conversation with the deans at the start of the school year. And that's something that we will be looking to do and to implement when things get back to normal. And you can rest assured that, we've got I've already been talking to partners. Dr. Robinson and I have been talking to partners as to how we're going to do this, what it's going to look like. And so that'll look different because we've learned, and when you know better, you do better, that we need to make some changes there.
That's a great example. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. Sorry. I just wanted to add too, I'm also working with this woman from the Moran Center that was trying to get a group of students together to also help with the disciplinary actions that we take at ETHS too. And I know that there's going to need to be more students, since we're all seniors going into next year, when hopefully we're, back in school. A lot more than we are now, but we're also we're thinking about different ways to handle discipline, and we have a group of students that are talking about it right now. And so that's my point of view, that are just working on different, more kind of community ways to help out with that.
That's a great example too, and thinking about the community. Thank you for that. And so as we think about what supportive accountability looks like in terms of discipline, I would add that, one of the things that we look forward to doing, we've been so fortunate to have the level of responsiveness even from leadership to respond to student needs with growth in service provision, even with individuals such as the additional social workers. I think one of the things that we've realized that we want to continue to grow, and that we started this summer with the Teacher to Teacher Toolkit on social emotional learning, is how can we grow that opportunity where teachers get to support each other as they think about social emotional learning and embedding it, not a program, but infusing it, right, in everything that we do. And we strive for that from a culture of care. And that's way easier to say than it is to do, right? When you've got a lot to do in the content areas. So we want to continue to figure out how can we support teachers in that. And I think we've also seen social emotional competencies. The pandemic has highlighted that, right? And so we want to continue to grow everyone. So everyone's social emotional competencies from a staff perspective, so that we can sustain each other. We know that we're looking forward to the return to normal, but we're going to be going through transitions, right? Even coming up in a couple of weeks, we're going to go through more transitions. How can we keep supporting each other in better ways so that we can better support our students? And that's a question that we continue to ask ourselves, even from a professional development perspective.
Thank you both.
Thank you for that. Gretchen, you have a question.
Hi. Thanks so much, Taya. It's always so nice to hear you present, because I think hope is always central to your message. So that's nice, especially in these times. So my question, first of all, also Marcus, I don't know who gets credit really for the chart on the activities, but I love that we're doing that. And that, well, there you are. I've totally lost track of where everybody is in their square. keeping track of the activities. And I think that's, it really, it's an impressive number, even as it stands now, without including those other activities that you referenced. So I'll look forward to seeing more on that front down the road for sure. So my question relates to the 5 Essentials survey. And my understanding is there's some components. There are 5 essentials identified in the 5 Essentials survey that are research-based, and if you do well in these 5 areas, that means you're doing great work as a school, theoretically. And it seems to me that the bits you're highlighting in your report, and I just want a little clarity around this, are the part of the 5 Essentials report, which I had to go look up, relating principally to the supportive environment piece. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. And looking at how culture and climate increases a sense of belonging, which leads to academic performance.
Right. Mm-hmm. I want everybody to know, and I'm not sure how we present or share other aspects of the 5 Essentials survey with people. It used to be that we'd kind of present it in isolation. And I think it makes more sense to present it as a component of how we track our own goals within ETHS, as you've done. I just want everybody to understand that this is part of a larger survey. And in connection with that, I want to note that we still don't have enough parents responding to the survey to get to see the breakdown of their results. So this was not a great year to expect parents to take the time to complete the survey. I think we can all agree. So I don't mean to point the finger at parents. But parents, next year, when things are going better, fill out the survey, because we do want your input. And we need to reach a certain threshold to see their input. But kudos to teachers and students who did generally fairly high number of responses, although I think we've done better in the past in terms of responses from both teachers and students. And then I would just say that anybody can look at this online, and the other categories relate to ambitious instruction, effective leaders, collaborative teachers, involved families, and supportive environment. And then within each of those categories, there's like all these subcategories. So you can see how we did. And the bottom line is we did better than many. We're above average. So that's good. But I don't know if maybe, Marcus, you're the better person to respond to where we might incorporate the findings of this survey in other aspects of our reporting in the same way that Ty has done here, because I think it's good.
Yeah, I think it's something certainly that we can look at and examine. I think it belongs here, and it could also go into a few other places where we give that report, where we give different reports throughout the year. So that's definitely something that we can look at and consider for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an easy thing to take our goals and then to break out the parts of the 5 Essentials and kind of match that up, and then we have kind of these regular intervals of reporting on different topics and kind of slot that all together so that it tells the whole story.
I think that's a particularly good suggestion, given that it also shows these are all connected, right? That's why they're the 5 Essentials, right? We can't just pull one apart and keep it separate, in the same way that the well-being isn't just focused on who feels good and who walked into an office, right? This is about how every single facet feeds into functioning on a level. So thank you.
Yeah, and that's how the 5 Essentials does. They have that little diagram where all the pieces kind of fit together.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Other questions, comments? Very good report. very important and excellent data. We'll have to continue to look at this as we watch our kids go through, like you said, these upcoming transitions. What will this mean and how will they do? I'm really glad we have a solid infrastructure in place to support them. I really like your ideas about what we'll keep in the future, how we'll continue to look at them prior to the beginning of school. It's very proactive. It's awesome. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, let's move on. Agenda. We have another really important report, update on e-learning.
Yes, and I'll begin this. And Marcus and Pete will be participating, but it's also, you can see that we're joined this evening by David Chan and Scott Bramley, and they too will be joining this report. And I'll just point out that since the last time I introduced him, it's now Dr. Scott Bramley.
Wow.
So welcome, Dr. Bramley.
Congratulations. Thanks.
So let me begin with some review and an idea about where we are at the moment and where we're headed, and then we're going to just continue drilling down into some more and more details. As you know, we're going to be offering some hybrid classroom instruction for our students in the final weeks of this school year after spring break. It was back in December when I announced that we would be remaining on fully remote learning for the third quarter. And I also announced at that time that our plan was to implement the hybrid model during the fourth quarter. And that plan for the fourth quarter has actually been posted on our website since that time. So lots of advance notice that we weren't going to push beyond the science, and we were going to make sure that we allowed a time for the situation to get safer, but that we really were, our goal was and continues to be to get instruction started in the fourth quarter. What we pledged then is, as we had pledged all fall, that ETHS would follow the science. And we have stayed really true to that, and I'll discuss that in my opening remarks here, so that even though many high schools in Illinois had already implemented hybrid models in the fall before second semester, nearly all the rest of the high schools districts implemented the hybrid model beginning with second semester. The science in Region 10 was still, I'll say, not indicating the level of safety that we really felt was right for ETHS. So at the same time, when we started second semester, we did start improving on our plans to be ready to go to the hybrid model fourth quarter. And we initiated at that time a complete review of our hybrid plan, the one that we had initially announced last summer and presented to you, board, in a lot of detail at that time. And it remained posted on our website throughout the fall. But our staff gave a great deal of input over the month of January, and by the end of January, we had updated and, quite frankly, improved our hybrid plan based on everything that we had been learning ourselves and everything that we were learning from other districts that had implemented the hybrid plan and many of the issues that they ran into. So as the metrics started to improve week by week, and they really were steadily improving, and I think some of you follow the Evanston dashboard and the Evanston metrics, as well as maybe Region 10, to know that, we really decided that we could begin our transition towards in-person by offering the in-person experiences. And we've discussed those at the board level. And as we shared with you, our students responded very, very well. In fact, hundreds of students signed up. And I think Marcus mentioned even again this evening that we, today on Asynchronous Monday, although that's not the only time, but we had students in and out of the building all day. And it was a great way to start transitioning to some in-person experiences that could still be more constrained and controlled as we were starting to it. And fortunately, we've been able to do that now for a while, and we'll be able to do that all the way up to spring break. So our students will have had several weeks for the in-person experiences. But then in February, about that same time, the CDC, and this is the CDC under the new leadership appointed by President Biden's administration, issued the clearance guidance to date for schools. And in that guidance, the CDC indicated that the metrics required to open, the metrics that we had in our region, clearly met the criteria for in-person instruction. And so I actually just quote this out of the CDC. When the metrics are at the level that they are right now in Evanston and in Region 10, when you fall under that category, the CDC indicates K-12 schools open for full in-person instruction, physical distancing of 6 feet or more to the greatest extent possible. Now, that's the key to what I'm going to talk about right now. The fact that open for full in-person instruction, but meeting the physical distancing of 6 feet or more in the school. And so we realized that we now fall under that guidance. But if you calculate the 6 feet of social distancing or physical distancing, we cannot possibly physically bring all of our students back right now and meet that CDC guidance. I mean, we couldn't come close. We're a big high school. You know, we have 36, 37, 3,800 kids here. And a lot of our classrooms, although it's pretty true even in newer construction, but in the construction in the era that our school was built, when we measured out our classrooms, and by the way, they've all been now refitted, with only enough furniture in the room to have desks 6 feet apart. We realized, and it didn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out, that we will be able to accommodate about 25% of our students at the same time. And so that is indeed our hybrid plan. Now, I will remind you, we knew that last summer. And even in the original plan before the current improvements, we already knew and announced then that to do the 6 feet of physical distancing, we would have to go with 25% of our kids. I know there are people who just can't understand. Well, if you're going to hybrid, why aren't you just bringing everybody back? That's the reason. And remember what I said. We're following the science. And part of the science is following the recommendations of the CDC and the IDPH, which have all, and subsequently the State Board of Ed, SB, they have all indicated that the 6 feet of physical distancing is required. So I know, when people aren't familiar with that or familiar with the size of our classrooms, they just can't understand. Why are you bringing people in for half days? Why are you only bringing in 25% of the students? Why are you rotating them? Well, if we bring in 25% of the students on half days all 1 week, let's say in the morning of a week, and 25% all in the afternoon for a week, it doesn't quite fit that way. We'll explain the real model. That's 50%. The alternating week is when we do the same thing with the next 25% and the next 25%. And then over a 2-week rotating plan, 100% of the kids who want to experience the hybrid in person are able to experience it. And then the rotation starts again. You're going to get much more detailed information about that shortly. But we know that we are one of the last high schools in the state to offer the hybrid. In fact, of the 95 high school districts, last I knew, maybe 3 were still transitioning into their hybrid, but I'm not sure we may be the last high school district to make the transition. And I know there are people who get frustrated at that. Why did you wait so long? Well, I want to remind you again, we waited because of the CDC guidance and the metrics that they outlined in their guidance that indicated that we have reached a stage for in-person instruction. That's the number one reason. Follow the science. But I want to explain another thing that's been important to me, and I've said it on eTown Live. I've said it in these board meetings. They also indicated that school employees being vaccinated is not a prerequisite. But I have been clear from the beginning that I think that our employees having opportunities to get vaccinated is really important. And I've talked about our demographics and people in our school, people of color who are demographics that have statistically more risk. And I've simply talked about the fact that we want to maintain safety. So first quarter actually starts 2 weeks before, in fact, in another week, it starts 2 weeks before spring break. But I had already pledged that we would get back in school during fourth quarter. And by not starting for the 2 weeks before spring break and then taking off and then trying to get geared up, I've recommended and instead, we're not going to open our hybrid until following spring break. But I want to be very honest about it. A major driving force for me is not necessarily the disruption between start the 2 weeks, take spring break and come back, although there would be disruption. For me, it bought us 3 more weeks for our staff to have access and to schedule appointments to be vaccinated. And I really believe that is hugely important. The good news is, finally, and I'm sure you're watching the news, many, many, many more opportunities to be vaccinated have been opening up finally. And we're also glad to see that. And it allows us then, basically from now until into April, for people to get those vaccinations. So the other and final thing that I want to point out right now, and I'll turn it over to my teammates, and you know, I'm sure I'll cycle back into the conversation this evening, is that I know that we have then about 7 weeks of the 9-week grading period left after spring break. And in my mind, that's about right. In terms of we're trying to transition into the hybrid. We're not jumping in to everybody back all at once. We can't even do it by following the science. We can't even do it by following the requirements that are out there. But what it will allow us is to start easing into and transitioning back in to some in-person instruction. I will remind you that it's 1 year ago this Friday that this school was open to students. It's been a year. Yes, ETHS has been closed to students. We've been providing great education, but this building has been closed to students and in-person instruction for a year. And so what these remaining weeks of the school year will do is give us some transition time. It'll also give us some firsthand experiences. We can learn all we want from other school districts, but we need to learn how it works and how it's going in our facility with our kids and with our staff. And it's going to be very much informing us then as we move into more in-person experiences in the summer. And my hope is, and more in-person experiences next fall. And we'll have to see what the CDC guidance and the IDPH guidance is for schools as we approach the fall. And Marcus, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Witherspoon. One of the things that we shared with the staff and we shared with the community last week is that we will use April 8th and 9th. They will be remote learning planning days. And that is those 2 days we will be pretty much doing professional development, allowing teachers and other staff members to have time to get set up, get acclimated, and to do whatever it is that they need to do to prepare for in-person learning. There's a lot of training that needs to occur, and we are still really thinking through strategically and trying to be very thoughtful about how we do PD. I mean, we're used to our massive gatherings and being very proximate, but that will not be the case this time around. And so we're trying to think through all of those components, and so that we are keeping everyone safe, but everyone also is feeling equipped and supported for how to return to the building. So that's a little bit of that. I am going to ask Mr. Jenkins to share a return to the building video that we have shared. And I just think it's important for the community and for you, board, to be able to see some of the changes that we have made to the school in anticipation of bringing kids back to the building for in-person experiences, and then now, I guess, for the hybrid. Mr. Jenkins.
Welcome to ETHS. This video will help show you what to expect when you are scheduled to be on campus or in the building. We all have a part to play. It starts with reviewing this checklist before heading to ETHS. Complete the pre-screening questions. Log on to My ETHS and complete the COVID self-certification screening prior to arriving at ETHS. This must be completed on the day of and before your scheduled arrival. Know your schedule. On the day you are expected to be at ETHS, arrive no more than 15 minutes before your scheduled time. Account for your travel time and be sure to plan as needed for e-learning that may be part of your day. Get charged up. Be sure that your devices, like your Chromebook and cell phone, have a full battery. This will help minimize contact with surfaces while in the building. Pack your supplies and a filled water bottle. School lockers, water fountains, and vending machines will not be in use. When you are scheduled to be on campus, expect to bring and take home all of the supplies you will need. And while kids, keep in mind the 3 W's while on campus. Wear your mask, wash your hands, and watch your distance. Following these simple steps can lower your own risk of being infected and help protect others. When you are scheduled to be at ETHS, you will enter the building through one of the entrance zones. Choose an entrance, 1, 2, or 3, that is close to your assigned activity. To help ensure the safe and efficient flow of traffic, staff will be on site to help direct you. Once you enter the school, walk directly to your assigned room or space. You will keep your mask on, covering your mouth and nose while you are on the ETHS campus. ETHS spaces, including bathrooms, are cleaned and sanitized on a daily basis for the continued health and well-being of our students and staff. Signs are posted throughout the school with important reminders on how to reduce your COVID risk. And hand sanitizing stations are located throughout the school to help keep hands clean. To allow for safe distancing for students and staff, all spaces at ETHS are set up with capacity limits. Since lockers will not be used, students are encouraged to keep moving in the halls, which are clearly marked to avoid congestion and maintain social distance. To reduce stairway traffic, stairwells are one way, either up or down, and clearly marked. Pay attention to the signage before entering a stairwell. HVAC systems throughout the school will continue to be monitored and maintained at all times. New or upgraded filters have been installed in all campus buildings. When weather allows, windows will be open in spaces for increased air circulation. When your scheduled in-person activity is complete, please leave the building promptly from any entrance zone, 1, 2, or 3, and staff may direct you to adjacent doors if needed to avoid congestion. If you are being picked up, please make arrangements in advance to confirm the time and location. Thank you for your help in keeping ETHS safe. We are in this together. We are Wildcats.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins, for sharing that video. And now I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Bavis, who is going to talk about the live learning schedule.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Campbell. I have a couple screen shares to do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through our general schedule, and then I'm going to walk you through what it would look like in a day in the life of an ETHS student who chooses to come into the school. So first off, here is the ETHS live learning bell schedule. You'll see that we have orange days and blue days. You will also see that we still have our Wildcat Monday for asynchronous learning. You'll notice that we've reduced our class periods from 70 minutes to 65 minutes. We did that because we needed to accommodate a break and travel period into our schedule. For students who are in in-person instruction for the first 2 periods of the day, they will need to travel home so that they can complete their day remotely. Conversely, we know we'll have students who are remote first and second period, and they will have to travel in. So that's why we've adjusted for a 1-hour travel period in the middle of our day. That was a conscious decision because we did not want to have students eating with their masks off in our cafeterias, because we know that is an extraordinarily high-risk behavior according to the guidelines. That's in line with what many districts in Illinois have done. They've broken their day like that, so they do not have to serve lunch in the building. Lunch will be strictly grab and go. You will see that we were also able to keep our office hours and teacher collaboration hours on Wednesdays and Fridays. So that's the general schedule. The question always is, what does that look like for a student? Well, let's take a look. So I'm going to walk you through what it would look like if your student was in cohort A. Student in cohort A comes to class on Tuesday for periods 1 and 2 in person. Then they will travel home and they will complete their day, periods 3 and 5, remotely. The X's denote remote instruction, and the periods denote when the student is actually in class. On Wednesdays, a student in cohort A this week would go to periods, if they had early bird, that would be period 0. They would attend periods 6 and 7 in the morning, and then they would transition home where they would complete their day remotely in periods 8 and 9. On Thursday, they will switch, meaning that their AMs will be done remotely. So on Thursday, the student will complete periods 1 and 2 remotely, and then come in for periods 3, 4, and 5 for in-person instruction. On Friday, just continuing along the schedule, they will be home for periods 0, 6, and 7, just learning remotely. And periods 8 and 9, they will come into school and they will take those classes in person. So as you see, throughout that week, they will cycle through their 9-period day. And then the following week, they will be fully remote. And then we will see cohorts C and D, for example, in this example, come into the school. Up next, I have Scott Bramley, who is going to actually walk through how the adjustments we've made to the schedule so that we can have equitable in-person class time for students.
Thank you, Dr. Bavis. So I was asked to present the specific dates. I think this is something that will be published to families who chose the in-person learning model for their families. Once we assign cohorts, we'll be able to communicate the specific cohort that students are in, the specific days and dates that they would be in person, and the specific time. So that's all forthcoming. I just want to take a moment right now to thank all of our families who completed the survey through Home Access Center. I know as a parent myself, had to make that decision for my son, and it was a very challenging decision for the family to make. And so I know a lot of time and energy had to go into that this following week to make that decision for your family. We do appreciate having the information so that we can plan all of the cohorts. We can communicate effectively to your family when you will be in the building, and we can make sure that your in-person learning experience is exactly what you're hoping it would be under the conditions that have already been described tonight. So I will share my screen for a moment to just go over the specific rotation, because we wanted to make sure that we didn't just do a generic rotation that might have some cohorts in a disproportional amount of time than other cohorts. So we did share a general outline on the web, just so families would have an idea of what this could look like. And now we're prepared to show the specific dates now that we've announced our return for in-person instruction for each cohort. So on the screen right now, you should be seeing a Google worksheet that identifies in column A the weeks that will be remaining in our school year after we return for in-person instruction. I want to take a moment just right now to thank all of our teachers and staff and students for the tremendous amount of work that they've done during our enhanced e-learning, which will continue for the majority of the school year as well. On any given day when you're not in person, or for our students who chose to remain fully remote, you will be engaged in enhanced e-learning. And so that model has been very successful for our school district, and we know that it served many students well. But obviously some students may not have been served as well and did want to choose for an in-person learning experience. So you'll see here the first week that we're back, the dates here will be Tuesdays through Fridays, because Mondays are asynchronous, except for the first week, which is why it's highlighted in yellow, because the first week on that Tuesday and Thursday, we have our state required assessment days for the SAT. So our students will be engaged in the state assessment, and all their students will not have instruction on those days. So we will only have 2 days of in-person learning and enhanced e-learning on that first week. And so you'll see here, each cohort gets in 1/2 day that first week. And then the rotation begins again, starting in week 2, where you have, for 1 week, you're seeing all your classes, and then the following week, you're fully remote. And if you were in cohort C, for an example, in week 4, you would have all your classes throughout the week, and then you would be fully remote in week 5, and then back in person for week 6. So another date of note is just the Friday, April 23rd is a non-attendance day, non-school day, non-work day. So again, you'll see there's a distribution chart here at the bottom, and the reason why some are 7 and not 6 is because of that. A couple of the cohorts lose out on that 1 day there. And you'll also notice that a couple of dates to keep in mind. May 13th is the last day for seniors, so the amount of time they'll be in person under this model is a little bit less than the distribution here. And then the May 28th is our last day of classes. And so as Dr. Bavis identified, your cohort is either in the building for in-person instruction, either in the morning or the afternoon, depending upon the date and day of the week. And then when you are not in in-person learning, if you chose in-person hybrid, you are engaging in enhanced e-learning fully remote at those other times. So this is the rotation that will be shared with families. And so we're in the process, we began today, of assigning the cohorts. I'm going to stop my screen share. We're in the process of assigning the cohorts, so families will be notified if they selected in-person instruction. They will be notified of the specific cohort, and they will also be given this schedule so they will know the exact dates and times that they would be in person in the building and when they would be fully remote for their planning purposes. Obviously, even if they selected into the in-person, this is a disruption for families. and for students and for learning. And so, to be able to plan for the impact of this in April ahead of time is what we're striving to provide them with as much information as possible. So as soon as we can get this shared out to families, we will do so. So again, they can make whatever plans and arrangements they need to account for the decision that they made to opt into in-person learning.
And I believe, thank you, Dr. Bramley. And I think that Mr. Chan is up next to talk about the tech component.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to give, as Dr. Campbell mentioned, I'm going to give an update on the classroom technology upgrade that we're going to be instituting during the hybrid learning plan. So as I mentioned to staff earlier when I gave this presentation, when I first started at ETHS, I was a chemistry teacher. And in science, we deal with a lot of knowns and unknowns. And when we started 1 year ago today, plus a week or so, there were so many unknowns about teaching students remotely. And I share this picture right here is part of my team, the tech team, and just the unknowns that we experienced. We met every day, and that starting in March when we started, and we just talked about how we can work with teachers on how to teach effectively remotely. And everything from like how many pictures would be on my dining hutch behind me to how to work with teachers during this interesting and challenging time. We really approached it together. And as we approach the year coming up, we've gotten accustomed to remote learning. We've gotten accustomed to our setups that we have in front of us. And so even though there are many unknowns with regards to hybrid learning, there are definitely the knowns that we know for teachers, and specifically DTHS, as has been mentioned several times this evening. The teachers have done such an amazing job during this time, and we want to keep that in mind as we move forward. Another known is that someday we're all going to return to ETHS. Everybody, 100% full capacity, all staff and students. So as such, we got to look at this hybrid learning model as that stepping stone. So what is our goal for any kind of like this technology upgrade? We want to continue to allow teachers to be successful with remote instruction while also providing opportunity to safely and effectively connect with students in person. So we thought about what upgrades would be needed and best utilized. We want to remain true to our IIT philosophy of not wasting resources on technology that would go unused. No more stuff in the closet that just gets, gathers dust and things like that. As such, what approach could we take that would maximize the strengths of our faculty and staff? Again, those knowns of excellent teaching. And how can we leverage these strengths towards the future when we're all back in person? In other words, how can we identify and successfully scale and deploy technology so that all teachers could use this from the very first day of this hybrid model and then continue using it for years to come? So I want to, as you can imagine, we have to begin considering these ideas long before, the 30-day notice we were going to receive. So I want to take a moment to thank several groups of people who have spent hours testing, staging, setting up workstations in these past months and in the upcoming weeks. Specifically from IIT, the STETS team, Dan, Clinton, Bright. We've had a technician on site to help teachers, to help staff that are working in the building for months now. In operations, Robbie Brown, Eddie, Clarence, Ponce, and so many others who have been working tirelessly to get classrooms in order, as has been mentioned earlier this morning or in this presentation, and all throughout, these upcoming weeks. Our business department, Kim Henry, Kendra Williams, when you need to get hundreds of tables in a couple weeks, they're your go-to. And 12 teachers who have volunteered to be part of our pilot these past couple months, all of whom have taught for some amount of time in the building these past couple of weeks, as we have identified what possible equipment recommendations, what training will be needed in the weeks to come. So as this group may or may not know, we shared with teachers, the cornerstone of our upgrade is a larger screen. So we've received feedback, as Dr. Witherspoon mentioned, we've looked at what other schools are doing. We've learned about from other hybrid models, other teacher friends and colleagues in other schools, and some even returns from research and articles pointing to just the benefit of having a large second screen. Whether many of our teachers have this already at home or not, we felt that this was a great investment for not just, again, the hybrid, but also for years to come when we're back again, all in person. So this large screen that is going to be placed in each classroom for all teachers will be a benefit to that. And we want to work around that. So as that cornerstone item, we want to add pieces that would complete this workstation so that it would indeed be greater than or equal to what teachers currently have at home. We also want to place this new equipment on a table, a surface that they could use. And as we shared out with teachers earlier this last month, we gave them option to choose whether they want to sit or stand. Again, we knew that teachers can do what they do well in the classroom. They are great classroom teachers. We want to provide a space for them to continue excelling in remote instruction. And then in the future years, simply reposition some of this equipment around so that it'll still be, of course, of use and not go into that closet. In many rooms, we found some sort of teacher tech station already that may have looked like this. Often the table's a little unsteady, hence the need for new tables. The desktop might have been outdated, and knowing which cords went with which item usually took a lot of guesswork. Furthermore, there was not really a realistic way to connect the laptop to the station, which prevented teachers from taking full advantage of their mobile device. Even students with their Chromebooks can potentially connect in the future to our workstations. So this seemed like the ideal opportunity to upgrade. I have to do a quick little sidebar here. We are constantly training our teachers how to avoid spam. And unfortunately, one of the biggest spam emails that you get is about IIT upgrades. And so I want to just reassure them that this is not a spam email. They will actually be getting upgrades for real. This is a picture of what we're modeling a station to look like. As you can see, that centerpiece, that large screen, and then a simple docking station, which you kind of see a little bit in this picture, but that light blue teal plug that's plugged into that laptop, a single cable will then allow the teacher to get access to the keyboard, the mouse, the speakers, the webcam, the second monitor, the ability to extend onto that screen so that they can see the students who are at home. Again, that 75% of students that are going to be remote during the hybrid, see them on that big screen, and then work with the students again in the classroom. And you can see the plexiglass actually also installed in this model room. So in the upcoming weeks, again, thanks to Basette's team, we're going to be installing workstations for the next 3 weeks, getting into every single classroom. I showed a snapshot of the spreadsheets, a monster spreadsheet where operations, IIT, we're all collaborating to make sure we get the best possible placement of these stations in the classrooms, all 257 classrooms that are in the school and more. We're doing the best we can to put these in place, working with teachers whenever possible, considering all the layouts and outlets and things like that. Just like a great Netflix series, we're going to drop a bunch of training videos and guides for these workstations, as well as how to work in a hybrid environment. So that's going to be coming out next week. We're also opening up our ed tech team for appointments, whether a teacher wants to come in person or have the ed tech team person be in their classroom doing like a Zoom or a Meet and showing them kind of where the setup is and talking through that and just helping them kind of get accustomed to what's to come when they return. And then lastly, again, just when we do come back after spring break, being on site, being available for our teachers, working with instructional coaches. It's not just about the technology. It's also about, how to effectively teach when there's, again, 75% on the screen and 25% in your room, and just talking through, collaborating on ideas to do that, culminating in those 2 days, professional learning days, remote learning planning days in late April, and then leading up to our first hybrid instructional day with students in the mid-April. So again, trying to work together with all of our teachers, of course, on the deployment of these stations, appreciative of all the support and efforts of operations and IT and business and everyone who's at ETHS. And again, our promise to our teachers and staff is that we're ready to support them and make this a successful transition. And again, that stepping stone towards our eventual full return. So thank you, Marcus.
Thank you, David. The best director of educational technology in the country. Ed Tech team. So.
Right. Thank you.
We're done, and I guess we can take some questions.
Right. Wow. I just want to start by just acknowledging all of the work that has been done this whole year. We talked about the fact that a year ago, Friday, I guess, is the date, is when we close. Yeah. Right.
I was going to say, it was Friday the 13th a year ago, and I think it'll be Friday the 12th this year.
Right.
So it's literally a year.
I mean, I've been just reflecting on that this year. Who would have known that we would be where we are like a year later? Who would have known that we would be we would have changed how instruction was done. So I know we've said many times how much we appreciate the teachers and the work they have done in order to figure out a different way to do their curriculum. And And I just really want to emphasize that, because I've heard many people criticize this year, criticize the academics. And this has not been a lost year academically. I think we will find when we're looking at academics and where students are when we are back, we'll find gaps and holes in student learning, but we always find gaps and holes in student learning. That's what we do. We look at where kids are, and then we respond and adjust our curriculum and our plans according to what they've done. This would not have been possible to do without all the work from David and your team. So I know you're working really, really hard and nonstop. And even when you put up that screen to say, we're going to be around, we'll make videos to show you, and we'll be here to answer questions. I just know how key it will be for you to be able to help folks get set up and to help them make the transition for this big change as we come back. So this is huge. This is big. There's a lot to anticipate in the next few weeks. And I'm just really concerned and excited. Want to make sure that teachers have the opportunity to do what they need to do to be ready. I know that teachers are anxious about it, and I've seen this myself. There is a lot of stress and anxiety on many levels on the parts of teachers, and understandably so. I get it. I know why. I don't know everybody's story, of course, but I do understand that they're stressed. So I guess I'd like us to talk a little bit. I know that many people on the screen will have questions. Can we talk some about what we're doing to support teachers and how we're answering some of their questions and what we're doing to keep the conversation going? Because I think a lot of people get their anxiety out in different ways, and sometimes the way anxiety is expressed, just pure fear may not come in a real productive way. So what are we doing to support teachers?
I'll begin, but I'll ask Marcus and Pete to amplify. So we had pledged way back that we would give our folks 30 days advance notice before we come back, so that they would have time, whether it's a child care issue or retooling their thinking or whatever. We actually gave that notice last week, well before 30 days. Because we knew that this was going to, really take some getting used to, and people are going to have a lot of questions. And then today we had an all-staff meeting where we presented the same kinds of things that we just presented to the board, and a lot of it was geared more directly to the staff who will be in the building and to the teachers specifically. After that all-staff meeting, we had breakout meetings within the different departments and divisions in the school. And again, we had tried to prep our folks on as much information as possible so that they could start doing two things: responding to questions and clarifying best that they could, but also gathering more questions. What concerns are not yet being answered for you? And so that occurred this afternoon. And we have an FAQ that we have created for the all staff that addresses many things, and not just the things we talked about tonight, but it gets really into a lot of granular information, and we will continue adding to that FAQ. So the kind of questions that emerge today and the kind of worries that emerge today will continue reaching out to people with as much information as we possibly can. And of course, we're still very open to people contacting their immediate supervisor, contacting the administrator within their division, so that they can have even personal responses to things that are worrying them, concerning them, or they just don't feel they've had enough information about yet. So Pete, Scott, Marcus, I'll kind of turn over to you. What other things?
I'll talk briefly. I led a group after our all staff. And, it's kind of like, it's exactly like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The questions I was fielding in my group, many of them were anticipated. And the preponderance of them had to do with health, safety, what protocols were in place at the school, what is the screening process. Now, we have all of these things established, and the building does look markedly different right now. But many of our teachers haven't been in yet. So I did a lot of explaining, a lot of listening, but those were the real concerns. We didn't talk much about instruction. The understanding with instruction is that, the benefit here isn't instructional. It's seeing the kids, getting the kids acclimated. It's a transition to the future, right? We're transitioning. We're getting kids and teachers back in the building. 99% of the conversation I had was around safety, health, well-being. That was where we were today. I don't know if that was the same for other folks, but that was my conversation.
Dr. Bramley and Ms. Kinsey also led groups, and I don't know if you all want to,
Sure. I mean, obviously a lot of what Pete said, so I don't want to repeat that, but I think the additional piece is really just, I think listening was extremely important. A lot of appreciation for just having a space to be heard. Obviously, as you mentioned, Pat, it comes out in many different ways, right? People's reactions and trying to process what they need. And so I think we'll just continue to be available and present and listen and be able to respond as we can. But one of the things I wanted to lift up, which will be a support in the future, once the immediate needs are articulated, and once the focus can shift a little bit more to instruction, which might be a while for some folks. I understand that completely. But David mentioned this a little bit, is we are doing some partnering with the ed tech team and the instructional coach team. And we have a brief planning meeting this week, and then we'll have a fuller planning meeting next week with the whole team, just to identify how can we support our colleagues through teaching in this environment. However we want to frame it, I think it's been put on the website as remote in person or this kind of simultaneous instruction. How do we help our colleagues do that without sacrificing their own well-being and self-care? Because if they can't take care of themselves, they certainly can't show up for our students the way that they will want to, and that we would need them to, and that our students will need them to. And so I think that's going to be a huge part of this, is how do we learn from our colleagues? How do we learn from other schools that have done this? And how do we use all that learning to be able to support our colleagues to do this in a way, again, where they can feel like they're able to have a successful experience for their students, for all their students? Because I think that's the biggest thing that we've heard outside of the health and safety and well-being. Anything around instruction has been, how do I make sure that I can continue to support all my students? I've been able to figure this out. At the beginning, it was a little tough figuring out enhanced e-learning. I was able to figure that out, and I was in a good rhythm with all my students. And now I have another shift. And how can I be a teacher that they need going forward? And I think our biggest call to action is going to be, how do we provide space and support for that as the administrators who are here to support them as they implement this with their students.
Thank you.
I was just going to echo that. I think it's clear from the many conversations that happen in different spaces with our debrief after today's all staff meeting the commitment to students. While staff were talking about what they need and what things we've already put into place, it kept coming back to our students. And that speaks volumes that even in the midst of yet another change, our staff are focused on our students. So thank you.
Gretchen.
I just have to say thank you because I have two things that I want to cover, but the first is thank you. And what strikes me about the presentation this evening is what a complicated piece of machinery this is. But it's not just that it's complicated. It's how all the moving parts within the district have come together, and it was really embodied in your separate but completely interconnected presentations tonight. And I just think it's extraordinary. I mean, it really is extraordinary. And, you know, I think there may be some who work in a corporate environment, for example, who would say, hey, what's the big deal? We're all back at the office. And I just, want people who are in that environment to think for a minute, how about if your office consisted of predominantly teenagers and you were, they were operating in multiple shared workspaces, and the shared workspaces have to be changed at regular intervals where everybody moves around. So anyway, I just, that sort of comparison comes to mind as we think about this. And I think it highlights what good work this is and how thoughtful it is and how challenging it can be. And your expertise sort of shines through in each of these separate presentations tonight. I mean, we can all be particularly wowed, especially non-tech people like myself could be particularly wowed by David Chan, but really everybody. I've called on David when I get weird things, weird emails and things, or I'm trying to get into a Google Doc with the wrong email address and I've been shut out again. Anyway, so it highlights the skill set of each of you and your importance to the moving parts here, which leads me to my second point. And my second point is I'm not an educator, so I don't have the expertise to know what education is best for our kids. But I do, as a board member, have the ability to ask questions. I don't even have burning questions about the presentation tonight. But the other thing I think a school board member can be is an advocate for a district, for a school, and for those who work within it. And one of the things that has been driving me insane, that's too strong a word, driving me a little bit crazy, has been the disaster that I think is our vaccine distribution system as it relates to educators and staff within the building. And so I just want to share with you a short note that I wrote to our elected people who are not serving on the school board, who theoretically have some involvement or control or role to play in vaccine distribution. So I'm going to share that, but before it's a short little note that I sent at the end of last week. Before I read that, I just want to say this isn't about finger pointing. I think what the problem with respect to this vaccine distribution seems to be that nobody is accountable. So if we start at the federal government, Biden can point to the previous administration for sure. And then from the federal government on down, you can talk about individual state distribution. And then within the state, you can talk about individual counties and cities like Evanston, who may have their own public health department, which should be an advantage to its population, but turns out not to be in this case. And then it comes all the way down to, our mayor in Evanston. and his struggles to coordinate with the local health department. So this isn't, it's a system that's been actually designed and created to be impossible for anybody to be truly accountable. But nonetheless, I think we do need to raise our voices in support of educators getting vaccines in a coherent way, not in this crazy ad hoc way that seems to be happening across our community. So I'm just going to read this real quick. I addressed this to Laura Fine, Jennifer Gon-Gershowitz, Robin Gable, Steve Haggerty, Ike Agbo from the City Health Department, Jan Schakowsky, Kelly Cassidy, and our newest elected representative who was just put into office, and apologies because I can't remember his name. He represents a corner of Southwest Evanston. I said, I find it difficult to understand why ETHS teachers have not yet been offered the vaccine in Evanston, while school communities all around us, including New Trier, Oak Park, River Forest, Skokie, and others in Lake and DuPage County, have been able to vaccinate their teachers completely, some of them weeks ago. I understand the vaccine shortages, I understand distribution issues, and I understand that Evanston has its own health department, but these issues do not explain the disparity between communities. Importantly, this is not just a matter of inconsistency, it's a matter of equity. As the attached article, this is an article from Hvac that Pat Savage-Williams shared with our entire board, and many of us subscribe to Hvac as well. That article stated, survey data from the two national teachers unions reveal stark inequities with the vaccine rollout so far. Black educators, the data show, are less likely to be vaccinated than their white peers. At ETHS, 51.7% of our staff is non-white. We have a higher percentage of teachers of color than any other suburban district because of our success in recent years recruiting teachers of color. Our teachers and staff of color are at higher risk of getting COVID and higher risk of dying from it, yet they are unable to secure the vaccine. I am aware of the soon-to-open sites at the United Center and also in Des Plaines, but I cannot believe that we are asking teachers to navigate that process and take the time to drive to these locations to get something for which they should be prioritized. Of course, many of our teachers have been able to secure the vaccine by taking the time to scour online appointment availability and drive to distant locations, but this is not the way vaccine accessibility should be prioritized. As I'm sure those of you took the time to ask for a meeting with our school administrators to urge the reopening of ETHS must realize vaccinations are an important element of the plan to reopen. Some of you exercising your privilege as elected officials have already secured the vaccine. I look forward to hearing more from each of you about how you can help put Evanston schools on equal footing with our neighboring communities by assisting our staff with getting their vaccines. Thank you for your efforts. So I just wanted to share that with all of you in this open meeting because I think there's this perception that our staff has the ability to walk out the door of their homes and get a vaccine because they're prioritized. And that's just not the case. It's too hard and it needs to be made right. So all I can do as a school board member is to raise my voice as an advocate on these kinds of issues. Thanks again for everything you guys are doing.
Thank you, Gretchen. Monique.
So everything that Gretchen said, 100%. I don't want to repeat anything she said because she was right on the money. But I would like to take a minute and I just feel the need to say this, that there is no one group or individuals that are pushing us towards making a decision that's best for our students. So I don't want anyone out there to think that they have that power. You don't. This decision, as it's been stated, was made. I think you heard it and we heard it over and over again. Students first. Teachers are making sacrifices. They are making tough decisions to prepare themselves to come back to school and to help support and teach our students. And I want to take a minute also to say to our teachers and our staff, faculty members, everyone, that if this process has not been the way that you would have liked it to be, I apologize for that. This is probably the most difficult thing that anyone, especially me in my seat as a school board member, that I've ever had to support, process, figure it out without having all the answers. And it's no easy answers. There are no easy answers, nor are there any best solutions. I think we are trying to do the best that we know how. And that's not good enough for anyone.
Mhm.
So I definitely apologize to our staff for putting you in a decision to try to figure out how to prepare yourselves to show up and continue to do the awesome work that you've been doing throughout the entire year. That's hard. And so I have to say, as a board member, it's a very difficult position to put you in. The other thing that I want to say, you guys did an awesome job explaining why it was so important for us to finally open or reopen. You know, as I'm looking through all of the presentations that you all gave, that I can't even imagine, I can't even wrap my head around everything that you just presented and created. But what do you say, and I don't know who can respond to this, but what do you say to those that may be thinking, whether it's a parent or staff or, you know, just other people out in the community, when they see the schedule, and they're thinking, why don't we just wait until students can spend more time in person with staff? You know, what's the benefit of going right now versus waiting until students see their staff or until staff see their students more than just every other week or maybe 2 or 3 times before school ends? What do you say to them?
I think the first most important answer is we are in a pandemic. And we have been given guidance by the state of Illinois, the State Board of Education, the Illinois Department of Public Health, and ultimately the CDC. And they have all now outlined that we are, given the metrics as they've identified them and reported them, we are in a space where we should be offering in-person instruction. And I have to tell you, we always said we were going to follow the science. And for us to now say, well, we're not going to follow the science, when do we then make that decision? I mean, if we decide we will flaunt it, I don't know when we then make that decision, to be honest. And we can't stay closed forever. So in my mind, because we really do have this guidance now, and it's where we are, and I think you have seen, I mean, much of the country is opening up. Mayor Lightfoot announced today that they're going to have over 8,000 people at White Sox and at Cubs games because they're now opening that up. They've now opened up restaurants. It is the advice and the guidance that we're getting and that's being followed by those, including Governor Pritzker and Mayor Lightfoot, who I think have really tried to adhere closely to that science and that guidance, unlike some states that we have seen. But if we all of a sudden decide we no longer pay attention to that, I don't know when we pay attention. And we don't know what conditions will be in the fall, to be honest. But I think what we have an obligation to do now, and then through the summer and in the fall, is try to be as honest and true to following that science and those recommendations and that guidance that we're getting. But the other thing I would say, and the other reason is, it's going to take a transition to move from being closed for a whole year to ever getting open. We're not going to go from 0 to 100 in any circumstances, because everything we know about this virus is nobody is guaranteeing that it will just simply be erased from the globe in 3 months or whatever that may be. So the other response I would add to that is that what we need to do then is start making the transition, not because we arbitrarily decided it. Start making the transition because that's the guidance we're receiving, and try to do it in a way to maintain as much safety as possible. No high school district that I know of has been more cautious and has taken more time and been willing to ease into this as the conditions improve than we have.
I would add, for those folks who want their kids here every day, Wrigley Field, their capacity is 20%. So there you go. That's outdoors. It's 20%. Same thing with Sox Park. I love to call it Sox Park because, to be honest, I don't know any other name for it. But again, it's at 20%. We are bringing back students with a capacity of 25%. Why? Because we have to do the 6 feet of social distancing. And we may have the largest building under one roof, the largest school, but we certainly don't have the largest classrooms under one roof. So those are two things to really, really keep in mind. I'm really glad you asked that question, Monique, and that's my answer to the capacity piece.
Thank you. Taya, do you have any, I'm looking to you just because it's a transition, and we know most transitions are difficult for any student, any kid. What does this process or this hybrid mean to slowly but surely welcoming our students back and their well-being?
So I think there's a couple pieces to that. And one of them is oddly has to do with continuity that we're working on. And by that, I mean the continuity of the instructional integrity. While it's going to look different, it's going to feel different to the extent that we're able to sustain similar practices. I know that's part of the strong effort. And I would say the same about the social emotional interventions. The good news for us is that we are going to continue to provide our consistency of practice through well-established groups and individual services. And so those won't be interrupted. So that's a big, important piece for us. We're not suddenly shifting to a brand new model. We are going to sustain that because we've experienced good success with that. What we are trying to really look and assess is how can we help students the moment they're walking in the building, right? How are we helping them transition? And that school-wide, we all own this perspective. That's part of why we're taking the time around the remote learning planning days. How are we shoring up our staff? I know Dr. Campbell was already talking about we're going to be partnering with folks to provide even more mindfulness opportunities, even more components around that. So we need to look at what we're doing to shore up our staff to support that. Thank you.
Can I say something? I just wanted to say that I feel like there's a lack of grace being extended, especially from the community towards the school. And I think that oftentimes people think that they're always going through something alone. And when in reality, this is a pandemic that the whole entire world is experiencing. And as a student, sometimes I get really, really frustrated when, I read emails from parents or see, public comments from parents when it's like my child is going through this thing, when it's like everybody is going through this. And it's not helpful and it's not fair to be selfish. And it's just like everybody is going through this and we can't accommodate everybody's needs. And sometimes I feel like some people have a sense of entitlement and they're trying to push their needs above everybody else's, and it's just not fair. And we're all going through this right now. So I just wanted to say to parents to just keep that in mind. I'm a student. I know firsthand what this feels like. I'm at home every single day, and I'm a senior. This is my senior year, and I'm losing everything. And I still want the safety of everybody kept in mind. And I'm still grateful for the fact that I'm at home. Both my parents have a job. I eat food every day. It's very, very important to think about the things that you do have when there's people who, can't even get through their day. So just extend grace, parents, extend grace, students, looking at this situation, because that's really, really important in this time.
Very well said. Very awesome. Very well said. Very powerful. And it is true. We've unfortunately had people in the community pushing us to open. And Monique is correct. That is not that we're not responding. We're not responding to that group. We are doing what we think is the right thing to do for our students at the right time. And I am proud of the pace that we have taken to get to where we are. And I'm proud of the plans that we have to slowly transition, to use these weeks as a way for us to slowly transition back into the building. And I know that for some people, they might get frustrated because it's going to feel slow, and it's going to feel, I can tell you, it's going to feel so very different. It is possible, it is likely that some kids will come and they'll experience it and they'll decide not to come back because it's going to feel that different. And for adults, it's going to feel different, which is one of the reasons we're trying to give people opportunities to get their feet wet, to start, to come and to try it. But Camille, you're absolutely right. Everybody, every school across this nation is trying to deal with this, and schools respond in different ways. And it just depends on so many factors. And we know our community, we know our demographics, we know that Black and brown people are getting this disease more than others. We know that. And for us to pretend like race doesn't matter would be totally irresponsible. And we're not going there. We're not going to do that. We've said that we're about race and equity. And if that's what we say, then that's what we have to do. I expect that always from ETHS.
And just one other follow-up to that Monique's question that I was answering. We also know that there are other reasons that some students want to be able to come in part of the time. It's not always just because for kids, maybe it's very little to do with academics. Not that our kids don't take their academics seriously, but maybe that's not the driving force. We know that about 46% of our students opted that they want to try the hybrid. Obviously, they're looking for something to get out of their bedroom, to be in a different setting. We were very clear, and Pat, thank you for saying it again. This isn't going to be what they were normally used to. Some people accuse us, well, you're trying to make it sound so bad. No, but we are trying to be realistic and honest with people. It's half days, it's alternating weeks. We're all going to be wearing a mask. It's only up to 25%. And still, even with our trying to be brutally honest, that it's not going to be like the ETHS experience that you have been used to, we still have about 46% of our students and families that want to try it. And so that says something too. And by the way, and a far lower percentage of our families of color chose that they want to try it than our white families. And that's okay too, because families of color understand, the kinds of concerns and risks that they have been facing in their families and community. And so, you know what? You have to acknowledge that people make personal decisions for personal reasons. And in this case, to make those choices for about 7 weeks, I think gives people a chance to give it a try.
So thank you for highlighting and acknowledging that students of color, many of them have opted to remain remote.
Yes.
And they do have a choice. And that's the way it is. There's no judgment. They have that option. And we will continue to work with them and support them and teach them under those conditions.
And I think it's important to remember that everybody still gets the same class.
Yeah.
I mean, even if it's your day to be part of the 25%, you're not going to be you're not going to be in that class all the time. Right. I mean, you're rotating, but everybody is getting simultaneously the same instruction. And I think that's really important to recognize. It's not like if you chose to remain fully remote, that now you're missing something that the in-person student is getting. No, everybody is still getting the same instruction, but there are students and families that obviously, for their own personal reasons, want to give it a try.
I just want to elaborate on that, Dr. Witherspoon. I think it's really important that we know that families choose that remote only, that e-learning option for a variety of reasons. And that is the reason that our hybrid instruction doesn't penalize students who are remote only. That is central to what we're doing. We want that integrity of the enhanced e-learning experience for students to remain intact. And the reason is that there shouldn't be an academic benefit, a tangible academic benefit for being here in person. There are lots of benefits, I'm sure, that we will see, but we want it to be, we want the access to the academics to remain consistent for all students, regardless of whether they choose to come in person or they choose to be fully remote. It's also, a fact that more than 75% of students on any given day will be remote for a teacher in a classroom. So that's another reason. But we really don't want to lose sight of that integrity piece, and that's central to our plan.
Pat.
Thank you. I just first want to say thank you to Carmia. I think you said just beautifully. What you said so beautifully, and I think the grace that you just exhibited is so inspiring, because I'll be honest, I'm an old, I can stay home and watch Netflix, but this is an exciting time in your life, and for you and other students, we all, I know all of us have had side conversations about how much we feel for young people right now, because it is a heavy weight on you. And so for you to be able to speak that to adults, and I don't mean us, but really broadly to the community and parents and to your peers, is just amazing. So I just want to say thank you to you, and I'm going to watch where you go, because you're definitely going places. So thank you. I also want to really thank our teachers and our staff. We have said this before, but we've really changed their job several times this year. And they're highly trained, highly expert, terrific educators. And we basically said, okay, you're going to do a different job now. And yet again, we're doing that in a way. And I think that is huge. And I just want to, pause like some of my colleagues have to just say thank you for that. And that we know that that's really hard. And I really like to hear when Taya was saying earlier about supporting each other as being integral to supporting the students and the broader education at ETHS. So, none of this has gone unnoticed by us, and we are grateful to all of you for that work. I do want to give a special shout out to David Chan, who we don't get to see too often at board meetings. You are amazing. I see those emails that you send with all the professional development and all the technology. I am blown away. And I know you have a great team, but it's very small. And you all are amazing. So lots of thank you. And thank you to all of our leaders who did all this great thinking and planning and are still doing all the thinking and planning and balancing. This is the thing that I've just continued to be impressed with during this whole craziness, is that equity stays central, students stay central, figuring out how to stay true to who we are, what our values are in educating our students and protecting our students' families and community. So doing that while the world is literally falling apart around you continues to amaze me. So, lots of thanks. But I did want to drill down on a rather specific thing. And I admit, I know you admitted that you aren't really fully at instruction yet. And in fact, that wasn't even what teachers were first worried about. They're worried about their safety, which is so legitimate. But in terms of you showed us the classroom, and you can see where the divider is between the teacher and the students, and they have the bigger screen. But can you give a little inkling into maybe some of the instructional things that might be different? Because one of the concerns that we've heard all across the country is that this hybrid is very challenging. Having a mask, teaching kids online, teaching kids in front of you, being heard fully, hearing and seeing people to respond. I mean, we work so hard to build community, and I know that's still really important to us. So how do we do that when you've got these kids over here on TV and you've got the kids in front of you? I just want to have a sense of what you're thinking. Are the kids in the class going to be on Zoom so the teacher can see all the faces at once? And you may only have like a smattering or a high level, but I really want to start to see where your thinking is going with instruction.
Well, I can start, and it's definitely something that we've talked about. It's my team, and we're, as Dr. Brantley mentioned, we're going to talk about instructional coaches tomorrow, and just starting to plan some of these ideas. And my first instinct is honestly to work with the teachers. I mean, I think you'll be different for each teacher. Some teachers will be very comfortable with, having the students, like you said, on the Zoom together, even the ones in the classroom. Others will be like, I want you to, we'll get the projector, because we have still have projectors in the classroom, and you're going to hear my voice live, and I'm going to be walking around keeping social distance, but I'll be able to support you while you're in the classroom. And another thing I think we're going to work with teachers, and I'll call out my colleague, Marion, who's definitely brought this up time and again, she's did a whole presentation on this, is to have teachers, just as they're transitioning back, just to remind them, just keep doing what you're doing already. You're doing such a great job with remote instruction, this enhanced e-learning. You're going to continue to be able to do that. And that's, again, the reason why we wanted to set up this station, that to really make them feel like home, short of, whatever the coffee machine they have nearby, to have this space for them, if not better, better hopefully Wi-Fi than your home Wi-Fi, and better, the screen is 32 inches. It's huge. And they're going to, hopefully be able to see everybody that they couldn't see before, maybe at home or on their laptop. We know we had some teachers just using a smaller laptop. So to be able to have that ability to kind of at least take that next step, and then from there on, just like how we did in the spring, honestly, when we transitioned, to your point, pivoting from classroom to all online, to go from all online to this hybrid, I don't think it may not be as big of a pivot, because again, they've excelled at remote, they've excelled in the past in classroom instruction. Now it's kind of putting it a little bit together, but really first acknowledging their anxiety, understandably, and reassuring them that it's okay. Keep doing what you're doing, and we will work together we'll find ways, your colleagues will collaborate in your departments to talk about what to do with this hybrid.
And David, do you find that over the course of this year that people that staff, particularly teachers, are more quickly coming for that support from you or each other? I mean, because, teachers, you were a teacher too. So there's a training that you figure it out, you do it yourself. And this is just such an unusual time. Taya's whole presentation, right? We can't do these things alone. We need each other. So have you noticed that they're coming to you and others more?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, we've benefited greatly from having a very strong rapport. Our two tech specialists and myself, we were all teachers. We're still certified staff. So having that is definitely a luxury at ETHS, right? Because we can talk with teachers and relate to their, I am removed from the classroom. I'll be the first to admit that, but I have done it before, and I can talk with teachers and empathize with what they're going through always in terms of that, and always taking the time to say, like, we'll do whatever we need to help you prepare for your lesson. And this, our motto when we come in, we'll teach the lesson first. And we've been doing that on Zooms and Meets. Mina and Melanie have been working with teachers all throughout remote learning and popping in the classes, working on projects just as they would have done in person. And then on top of that, now that everyone knows how to do a Zoom and a Meet, we can be that much more proactive and reactive with teachers when they need some help. And so whether we are at home or whether in the building and they're in the building in their classroom and they're just, on the third floor or we're on the first floor, we can be there even faster now with video conference as opposed to running over to the room. I mean, we'll do whatever it takes, but having that ability, I think, knowing that teachers can contact us and get a real answer in real time is another benefit of what we've gone through.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments?
Pat, I just have one more, and I have to say this since we mentioned the numbers. I guess for, all of us that truly appreciate the diversity that living in Evanston brings or gives us, that may not be what your students will experience with the hybrid. That may not be what will be seen through hybrid. I just can't skate past the fact that many of our Black families and students are choosing to stay remote, which I understand 100%. And it is absolutely okay in their choice. But I'm assuming that the majority of our white families and white students are choosing to become hybrid or come into the school. That changes ETHS as I know it. So I just want, and I'm a native of Evanston, and I always hear about how people love and appreciate the diversity, and that's why they moved here, and that's what they enjoy. Just know that will be something that will not be experienced through the hybrid experience if everything goes according to the data that we currently have. So that just sits differently in my soul, but I just wanted to highlight that. That could be our reality, and I understand it. I mean, I absolutely agree with everything Eric said. We have to open. We have to move forward.
Monique, you're making a good point. And we don't even know if we'll still have to be on a hybrid next fall. And if we are, we're still going to give people the choice. We're not going to try to tell people, oh, you really need to come in or whatever. If we are on hybrid, it'll be, this kind of approach where people will make their own personal decision. So I think your point's well taken. It just may be that while the pandemic continues, if we are doing hybrid, I just think we must give people the choice.
Oh, absolutely. And it's nothing against the choice that we have to give. I think it's more so against those, people that are thinking that when they walk into the building, it will be as it was.
No, and
when we left a year ago, and it won't. You're making some very difficult decisions to get us back.
Yeah.
And so people need to understand that when they start complaining, right? When they come back, because they will, that this is not easy by any measure, but it will not be what you thought it would be, or what you think it should be, or what it was a year ago this month.
I'm really glad you lifted that up and emphasized that, because I just think it's a hugely important point.
Yeah.
So it's going to look very different. It's going to feel very different, because it will be. And it's also going to look very different in terms of the student body.
Yeah.
And the teachers. Students may not see their teachers. So it's just going to be very different. And right, we will hear people complaining or questioning, but it's all a part of, just remember, we are in the middle of a pandemic. We are not out of this yet. And I don't hear us declaring that we're done. And so that's why we're coming back. That's not the language we're giving. We're transitioning. This is, I think somebody on this call called it a stepping stone. This is a first step. And to be very honest, some of the predictions out there around some of these variants might send us back the other way. And if that happens, we will go back the other way, because we are really all about trying to make sure we do everything we can to make sure our students and our faculty and staff are safe. So if it looks like they won't be, then we'll pivot again. We have to, we will. It is our priority. And it is why we make all the decisions that we make.
I just have a brief comment and a question. The comment being that I echo my fellow board members and in all of your praise and admiration for our incredible team and faculty, staff, and who brought us to this point, and all the work and effort that have gone into it. It's truly impressive, and I'm very proud. And I feel very humbled and gratified to be in your company tonight, knowing the extraordinary work that you've all done. So my praise to you for that. And now I'm going to have a question, which will probably reveal my poor math skills. But as I'm thinking about this 46% number of people who've elected to go back, families who've elected to, students who've elected to go back to the hybrid model. And it just occurred to me as I'm listening to the presentations and thinking about the numbers and what the experience will be like in the building, in the classroom. Is it fair to say roughly that with 46% of students coming back into the building over the course of a week throughout the rest of the hybrid period, if we go by the rule of 25%, does that mean that we actually will have a quarter of the half that are going back, essentially. Is that fair to say? So if you have 46% on any given day in any cohort, you actually have, say, 11 to 12% of that total population. Is that how it actually, it won't be 25% of the students in a class. It'll be more like 11 or 12. My math may be really wrong.
No. Your math is correct.
Okay.
But the reason that we're parsing it out like this is people don't for example, maybe a higher percentage of kids taking, English
right.
want to come back. And so the reason we're holding to the 25% is we don't want to take a chance that some classrooms are overloaded, because we must accommodate all the kids that period.
Right.
And whatever percent. You are correct, but we really need to get everybody allocated to their different cohorts and make sure that there is no mistake that all of a sudden you've got way too many kids, walking into a classroom. But some of them will be a much smaller amount. That's absolutely true.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for providing us with all this really important information. Thank you, board, for your thoughts and comments and questions. Thank you, administration, for your ongoing work, because this is just the beginning. Well, this is all the middle of it. All right, I'm going to move us along as soon as I find my agenda. Okay. Comments from the public. Dr. Bavis, what do we have?
We have 80.
Ooh, 80. Okay.
So they're going to be 45 seconds each tonight, and someone needs to call time in an hour to make sure that I've done that, because by board policy we have 1 hour to get through them. They are all going to be uploaded for the public to view tomorrow morning. Those will be uploaded, and you actually have in your packet under private view. You can view those this evening, but we will be publishing those out to the community first thing in the morning in their entirety, just so you know. But I will do 45 seconds. Some of them will be completed in their entirety, and some of them will be interrupted. So I'm going to start, if that's okay. Is that okay?
That is fine. I will keep time.
Okay, let me know when it's, 10:49. All right, great. All right, ready?
Yes.
Here we go. The first is from Abby Tarilli. We applaud your decisions to begin the hybrid reopening after spring break. We are also supportive of your continued effort to ensure the safety of the staff, teachers, and students. It seems a vaccine will be available to teachers and staff by that time. The issue isn't and shouldn't be one to divide people in the community. All students will greatly benefit from at least some in-person learning. With appreciation, Abby Schrager Tarilli. The next public comment is from David Scrim. A lot has happened in the last 2 weeks. We are trending towards one new COVID case a day in Evanston. My children's hockey and soccer teams have restarted intra-city games. Evanston restaurants are back to 50% capacity. Bars are open until 1 a.m. ETHS cross-school sports season is underway, and ETHS classes are in exactly the same state as 2 weeks ago and will be the same 2 weeks from now. Like someone dying of thirst, happy for a drop of water, perhaps, I should be happy with the announcement that ETHS is going to maybe kind of somewhat partially get back sometime in April for a few days, but I am not. I am concerned with the health consequences of isolation my children have or felt, and that's time for that one. Again, those will be available in their entirety. The next is from Sarah Torrey, and she writes, please stop once and for all with the smoke and mirrors remote learning branding that has been going on since August. Please stop branding enhanced e-learning, ETHS experiences, reopening, all of which amount to not much more that my daughter logging into her computer in her bed, being disengaged, and failing most of her classes. I've been shut down too many times by a superintendent, the principal, and the administration when I reached out and begged for accountability, for support, for thinking outside the box, and for resolution. All solutions offered to us by ETHS have involved something remotely. To our family, this is pouring fire with gasoline. It's time to get the kids back into the classroom. You guys have had more than enough time to come up with a decent plan to get our students back in the classroom. And that's time for that. Again, full comments will be available in the packet. Next, we have Kate O'Brien. Thank you for your actions to bring kids back to ETHS. Although the CDC has said teachers and staff vaccinations is not necessary for reopening, I am glad teachers and staff will be even more assured regarding safety. As we look ahead, I would appreciate you sharing what metrics or factors will weigh into your decision about fully reopening in the summer. As we know, the risk of serious illness from COVID infection for children, including children of color, is minuscule. Of the 500,000 COVID-related deaths in the U.S., more than 500,000, all but 200, are in adults. And thankfully, research has demonstrated that being in the classroom does not add risk. If anything, it reduces risk relative to the home. Well, 6 months ago, it may have been difficult to assure our community of the relative safety of being back in school time. Next comment. Svetlana Beckman. I'm thrilled that ETHS is taking crucial first steps in reopening the high school. My family and I really appreciate this, and my junior is looking forward to being in the building, seeing his classmates, and interacting with his teachers. By taking on this challenge, you recognize how important it is for students to have the opportunity to go to school in person, even if those experiences will be very different from before. Equally important, you have accommodated those who wish to remain remote to make sure that there is no student is left behind during this time of transition. I am encouraging you, but also have some questions and concerns remainder of the school year and the upcoming 2021-22 school year. Primary among them are, 1, what COVID prevalence metrics are being used to decide that it's safe to reopen hybrid learning now? What metrics will be used to suspend hybrid instruction? And that's time. Again, the full comments will be available in the packet tomorrow morning. Kevin Remmer is our next public comment. Let me express my sympathies for your extremely tough predicament balancing the lives of children and school staff amidst the pandemic. I kindly ask you to take a moment to read another perspective on the reopening of 202 in the hopes that it will aid in your imminent decisions ahead. 1, my children are unsupervised this year throughout their school day as my wife and I work long hours during the school hours. 2, my children are regularly failing their classes and are no longer learning effectively despite having the proper technology. My children have not failed prior to the pandemic. 3, some of my children had better interpersonal skills a year ago. There has also been a degradation in health, ambition, and general assertiveness among other traits over this time frame. This trend appears to be accelerating. 4, time. And the remainder of that comment is available tomorrow. The next comment was sent by several teachers and staff: Anya Pierce, Edward Gray, Lindsay Schultz, Katie Kelly, Sabrina Emke, Margie Petroff, William Latham, Gabby Perez, Ashley Cummings, Anita Bucio, Tara Pollack, Mary Joy Heineman, and Paula Rocco. They wrote, as dedicated employees of ETHS High School, we care deeply about the students and community that we serve. We are concerned about the superintendent's recent decision to move to the hybrid instruction beginning in April, and we hope that you are willing to check this privileged action and try to keep us operating in a safe manner that is best to students in our community. Our first concern is that our ETHS students aren't going to benefit from the hybrid model and will in fact be harmed by it. We agree with Dr. Witherspoon in the 1218 E-Town Live when he said, we came to understand that if in-person is the best, the second best is to actually be on remote, which we have been, and the third best is the hybrid model, close quote. We can't imagine why he would say that and then make the unilateral decision that he's just made. Remote learning is certainly not perfect, but we worry that my students will miss out on even more learning if we switch to the hybrid model. The conclusion of that comment is available, will be available tomorrow. Next up is Leslie Kirby Miles. I want to thank you and your leadership in taking an important first step in reopening the high school. Based on my son's and friends' experiences, I know that your students are desperate for in-person learning after a year of remote learning. I also have been very relieved that ETHS will be administering the SAT to juniors in April. This takes a huge burden off parents who, like me, have been trying since the fall to have their children complete the assessment. While I am encouraged, I still have many questions concerning the remainder of the school year and the upcoming 2021-22 school year. For example, what COVID prevalence metrics are being used to decide if it is safe to reopen for hybrid learning now? And what metrics will be used to suspend hybrid instruction? Is the school exploring the use of testing to track the prevalence of COVID in the community? Like at Oak Park River Forest? What are ETHS expectations concerning when and how staff that concludes that public comment, but you can view the entire comment tomorrow morning in the packet. Next up is Jason Miles. I want to express my appreciation for the steps you are taking to start the process of reopening high school. Updated science and facts tell us that while the pandemic remains a significant risk, the unintended side effects of remote learning must also be prioritized and addressed sooner rather than later. Parents, caregivers, schools, educators, and medical practitioners all have very important roles to play for our teens. The statement is true even in the best of times. But perhaps never in our lifetime will we face such a strong need to respect each other, these groups as members of a single partnership focused on all aspects of our teens' welfare and development. Our collective experience and knowledge can overcome false narratives and fear more quickly than it can each group in isolation. Our collective efforts can support those most in need more quickly than if each group acts alone. I urge the district to increase dialogue and transparency. The remainder of that comment will be available tomorrow in the packet. Next up is Jin Ho Chung. I'm writing to ask that you fully reopen ETHS for the upcoming fourth quarter. I'm guessing you already are aware that many non-partisan scientific and medical research studies, including the reopening of schools, does not have a significant impact on COVID-19. I'm also guessing you are aware that many non-partisan studies that show that remote learning platforms have been a disaster for most students across the country. This is not meant as an indictment of D202 policies. I am well aware of and can certainly appreciate the safety concerns that you have been raised as your desire to prioritize the well-being of ETHS staff. But I'm hoping you can also truly appreciate that most students in D202 are in dire straits and have been for many months now. The current crisis has many horrible tentacles. For many students, remote learning is simply not conducive. And the remainder of that comment will be available tomorrow morning. Next up is Bill Sherman. My senior tells me they've learned little this year. The teachers try to make remote learning work, but it's not a substitute for in-person. It's time to bring the kids back for everyone's sake. Thank you, Bill Sherman. Next up is Tara Fitzwick-Williams. We were thrilled to hear the announcement of the reopening of the high school. My junior is so glad to be back. Her siblings have been the happiest they've been in a year since District 65 opened for the hybrid. To continue momentum in the fall and to keep school open safely, we urge you to reconsider consulting a medical advisory committee to assist with the crucial decisions in communication. The staff and faculty would have a resource for safety concerns and vaccines. It is our hope that the district will assist the staff and faculty in obtaining appointments for these vaccines so that they feel safer for their return to school. Thank you for your consideration of those who are against returning to school by providing the remote option. By having both in-person and remote learning, it makes sure no student is left behind. Thank you, Tara Fitzwick-Williams. Next up is Kristen Watson. I commend you for making a decision to begin in-person learning. However, you appear to be actively taking steps to discourage students from coming to the school for an education, and that seems wrong to me. You seem to be fostering a feeling of fear and uncertainty with in-person education, which I believe makes it very difficult to gain the trust of your stakeholders. Without trust, who do you expect to move forward? By setting up the hybrid schedule in half days, you make the transportation, rides from parents, public transportation, and even walking or biking to and from school more difficult because of the midday transition, thus discouraging in person. It sounds like you made the adjustment because of the challenges of lunch. I find it difficult to believe that you cannot come up with a safe way to provide lunch in a facility the size of ETHS. Also, by making in-person education an opt-in instead of a default, all students are expected to return to classrooms. The remainder of that comment will be available tomorrow morning. Next up, Kara and Don Rudolph. I'm writing it to you as a concerned parent of an incoming junior. The reason for this note is because we as parents feel it is imperative that our child be set up for a full-time return to school come this fall. Our daughter's mental health over the past year has not been the same since it was before COVID-19. There has been a decline in her overall disposition. She has barely had a high school experience. These are key milestones for every young person to experience, and without them, a young person suffers emotionally. We believe that schools can open safely. Once teachers and staff get vaccinated, then we know that there are no longer any real setbacks to opening school doors. Evanston has been such a wonderful resource. We moved from the city of Chicago to Evanston because we felt Evanston schools were more powerful in comparison to CPS schools and the constant threat of strike. However, this last year, we have not seen Evanston schools. Okay, the remainder of that comment is available. Will be available tomorrow. Next up is Tim McCauley. I have 2 children that have graduated from ETHS and another who is a current junior, and I take no pleasure in telling you that this has not been a great year to be a wildcat. I have seen my children have less interest in school and potential of college, and this saddens me greatly. From the ETHS administration, I have seen inconsistency in reopening plans and communication, apparent lack of urgency to reopen the school. While I have appreciated the recent step to a partial in-person learning starting after spring break, this is happening a full year after we shut down and with little notice. Additionally, I'm worried you may reverse course with even the slightest pushback from the union president. What I'm asking is, 1, complete the hybrid plan as proposed within the weekly progress reports. 2, commit to fully reopening in the fall. 3, conduct a full 5-week summer school as a dry run for the fall. Remainder of the comment will be available. Remainder of the comment will be available in the packet tomorrow. Next up is Kathy and Rob Grottinger. Our 2 daughters began as freshmen at ETHS in the fall of 2020. One of them struggled during the lockdown last spring, and we were hopeful ETHS would offer some form of in-person instruction during the 2021 school year. We are immediately discouraged after watching the first D202 board meeting of the school year with no reopening discussion on the agenda. We made the decision to enroll our daughters in a public high school in Raleigh, North Carolina for the spring semester, a school similar to diverse racially and socioeconomically as ETHS. In September, the school board in Raleigh began to work with ABC Science Collaborative, led by Duke University School of Medicine, University of North Carolina. The program pairs scientists and physicians with schools and community leaders. The program is funded by the National Institute of Health and provides guidance to school districts across the country. Remainder of the comment will be available tomorrow morning in the packet. Next up is Evan Belgrade. At ETHS, this is, at Evanston, we value family. At ETHS, this is central word, family. We see it in the halls here in every meeting, every announcement, every memo. We are the ETHS family. As this reopening process goes forward, ETHS is offering families and children who attend the high school an option, engage in hybrid learning or remote learning. No explanation needed. We know that we respect Evanston families who will choose what's best for them, for their families, for any good and valid reason. Since we hear about the ETHS as a family, not simply workers or employees, but family, we must conclude the same option, hybrid or remote, will be offered to everyone in the ETHS family, teachers, staff included, faculty. Those people, too, are real people with real circumstances, real concerns, and real needs. If reopening does indeed happen in April, some will choose to engage in in-person learning, some will remain remote, but we must respect that all will make the decision with the intentions. And the remainder of Evan Belgrade's comment will be available in the packet tomorrow morning. Next up is Luis Keeley. I have 2 sons who are currently attending Haven Middle School. My older son is registered to start at ETHS next year. I and many of the parents have stood by silently expecting that our school board and administrative leaders would do the best thing for our children and get them back to school in person in a meaningful way that supports learning and social development this academic year. This has not happened, and it looks unlikely to happen. These decisions have been made with very little transparency for parents, as far as I can tell, without an organized consultation of medical experts or community views. Having a medical advisory group seems preferable in an uncertain public health situation. Please reconsider that. Please also consider instituting a way to both engage the community of families whose children are attending or will attend your schools, as we know firsthand, and the remainder of the comment will be available tomorrow morning. Catherine and Anthony Palin. We are grateful that ETHS leadership is working towards reopening the high school. For many of us, reopening is critical for the well-being of our children. We, like many parents, have a son who is struggling with long-term remote learning. His engagement level in school, sports, all things he was passionate about has continued to decrease, and his interest in college programs continues to wane. We are concerned about the long-term effect this will have on him. We are very encouraged by the recent decision to start reopening. We still have many questions concerning the remainder of the school year and the upcoming 21-22 school year. Our hope is that more transparency and parent engagement in the decision-making process. In order to move things forward and build trust and goodwill, we respectfully ask that you do three things. Reconsider your rejection of the medical advisory group. We have children in District 65. The medical advisory group has been very helpful. Again, the remainder of that comment will be available tomorrow morning. Next up, Matt Pierce. I do not have students at ETHS, but I do have 2 students in District 65. I imagine ETHS families are struggling like mine with school being close to in-person learning. My kids on paper are doing well with remote learning, good attendance and grades. However, I know that remote learning is not nearly comparable to in-person instruction. My kids' standardized test scores have plummeted. The teachers just aren't able to teach the curriculum effectively in this environment. From what I've seen, it seems like the number of complexity of topics in the curriculum is being reduced, and the difficult topics have been removed. Please consider reopening school to all students who want to attend. Not everyone has to go back if they don't want to, but please have an option for those students and families that do. If nothing else, please ensure that school is open again in the fall. Thank you, Matt Pierce. Next up is Michael Allen. We are pleased that ETHS resumed hybrid learning in April. The nature of the reopening plan is so conservative that it means that ETHS senior will likely attend school for just 8 half days between the announced reopening date of April 15th and the last day of school for the senior class of May 13th, which was senseless accelerated this fall. The reopening plan is simply too little too late. And given the plan is identical from the original announced in the summer, when no vaccines existed and the epidemiology of the COVID-19 was less well understood, it's not at all clear what medical or scientific guidance informs it. In particular, it's not clear what accounts for the 25% threshold when not all students will opt to return to in-person, meaning substantially less than the number will actually be present in the building, and when President Biden has ordered that all teachers and staff have access to at least one vaccination by month's end. Remainder of the comment will be available in the packet tomorrow morning. Next comment is from Beth Airy. My personal experience allows me to be very descriptive, but I've chosen to be brief. I've studied a student enrolled in Glenbrook High School, where they have been for variations of hybrid education since October. ETHS has stated the benefit of its person learning includes personal interaction with staff and social interaction with peers. Here is what I know and reported by students at GBS. Because of social distancing, mask, and attention to remote students in person, students do not have an opportunity to engage in more personal interactions with teachers. Because of social distancing, mask, and attention to remote students, in-person students do not have more opportunity to engage socially with their peers. Remember, teachers will be teaching through Zoom from their desks wearing masks. Additionally, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that the midday departure arrival exposes the inequities in safe and reliable transportation for our students. And the remainder of Beth Airy's comment will be available tomorrow morning. Next up is Ed Finkel. Thank you for taking the first step to reopen ETHS and give students who choose to do so the opportunity to attend class in person while giving others the option to stay remote and receive equivalent instruction. It seems especially crucial to freshmen to give them a chance to learn to navigate the building and feel like they actually attend school there for real, as well as for seniors for whom this may be this is a last hurrah. In response to the teachers union's concerns, I hope you will not delay reopening any further, but I do hope you will pursue every possible avenue to find vaccinations for teachers and staff before April 15th, as well as exploring screening tests, possibly using federal funds that looks like it's about to start flowing to add another layer of protection for the faculty, staff, and students as schools reopen. It would also help to know what their metrics are in your mind, and it would cause you to suspend hybrid instruction in the spring. And the remainder of Ed Finkel's comment will be available tomorrow morning. Next up is Melissa Dalrymple. Please reopen ETHS. Kids are losing the critical judgment forming years to screens and solitude. Let's help them come back to a safe community with mental stimulation and something to look forward to. And the next comment is from Eric Shahab. My best wishes to all of you for your continued good health and safety. Congratulations on your decision to return to ETHS students to the classroom. The mental health toll has been mounting for many, and the data regarding the safe reopening of schools supports you. The weeks ahead will require that every one of us in the Evanston community, continue to practice social distancing, good hand hygiene, masking, and tracing. ETHS success will be a community effort. As a physician, we have kept our patients and staff safe using exactly these mitigation strategies. However, I can also tell you that it takes time, practice, and repetition to master them to be comfortable around one another. Therefore, with my strongest possible recommendation and encouragement, the faculty and staff should return to the building as soon as possible, even this week, and certainly before the arrival of students. And the remainder of Eric Shahab's comment will be available tomorrow morning. Next up is Sonia Nordahl. Thank you, ETHS leadership, for taking a crucial first step in reopening the high school. By taking on this challenge, you recognize how important it is for students to have their opportunity to go to school in person, even if those experiences are very different than before. We also appreciate the significance of allow students to remain remote and make sure that no student is left behind during this time of transition. We were very encouraged. We still have some questions concerning the remainder of the school year and the upcoming 2021-22 school year. For example, what COVID prevalence metrics are being used to decide it's safe to reopen the hybrid learning now? And what metrics will be used to suspend hybrid instruction? Is the school exploring the use of screening tests to track presence of COVID in the high school community? What's ETHS expectations for concerning how staff will be vaccinated? What plans are under consideration for in-person summer school, and how and when will decisions? And that concludes that. The remainder of that comment will be available tomorrow morning. Next up is Erica Thompson. My name is Erica Thompson. I'm an English teacher at Evanston Township High School. I'm writing to urge you to reconsider your decision to begin hybrid instruction after spring break this year. The observations below are based on my personal experience as a teacher this year and for the past 9 years at ETHS. After pivoting last spring, teachers went into high gear over the summer to master best practices for remote teaching. With training and leadership of our talented technology team, the effort were Herculean, the rollout smooth. School administrators and department chairs supported us, and we pulled together as a Wildcat family. I am deeply appreciative of the support and our amazing students have received from our leadership throughout this challenging period. Since diving into remote learning, it's apparent to me that the aspects of the remote approach are better. Content is focused, authentic, and versatile. We are building classroom community, innovating, maintaining high expectations, and providing high quality feedback. And that's time. The remainder of Ms. Thompson's comment will be available tomorrow morning. Next up is Ben Nader. I'm writing to voice my opposition to the plan of reopening for hybrid learning in April. At a high-risk resident of Evanston myself, I am absolutely dumbfounded as to why ETHS is rushing to reopen schools and begin in-person learning before it's clearly safe to do so. Just like President Biden issued communications to the contrary, that by the end of May, there will be enough vaccines for all adults in the U.S. who want to get one. He did not say by the end of March. He did not say at the beginning of April. And he certainly did not say before April 15th when you want educators and staff to return. On March 4th, the city of Evanston sent out an update communication regarding vaccination progress in the city. They said they'd only vaccinated 8,000 individuals, a majority of which are over age 70 or first responders. Well, teachers who work in Evanston are allowed to sign up for a vaccine time. Remainder of the comment of Ben's comment will be available tomorrow morning. Next up is Sylvia Zwain and Dr. Sean Simpson. My husband and I implore you to use clear science-based reasoning to accelerate the resumption of classes at ETHS. The loss of in-class school over the past 12 months has been devastating for our 14-year-old daughter. During this time, she has only learned to interact with other 14-year-olds and only in a virtual online setting. She is rapidly losing confidence in her ability to socialize generally and specifically with other teens. She has not been able to form a single new friendship or been enriched in any way from the cultural diversity that we sincerely hoped ETHS would offer her. Academically, we've seen her become increasingly jaded by schoolwork and academics as a result of the e-learning regime. Well, we accept that you and your staff have tried valiantly to bring the curriculum to your students during this terrible past year. The online learning is no substitute for in-class teaching. From ETHS or student time. Remainder of that comment will be available tomorrow. Next up is Ed Zwerner. As the board considers the implications of the return to in-person school, I would again firmly advocate for you to create a reopening advisory board to help plan your process and not a medical advisory board as advocated by the narrow constituency of pediatrician parents attached to the political advocacy of Reopen Evanston Schools who published in the roundtable. While a medical professional or two with experience in infectious disease or epidemiology will be instrumental on such a board, you will also want objectivity, something sorely lacking from the individuals who have agitated for the expeditious reopening of schools. While the rhetorical shift in the last article of March 4th is commendable, the desire to tell people their business is still present, and their own personal self-interest too much on their own agenda. It will take clear, objective, unbiased individuals, and the remainder of Mr. Zwerner's comment will be available tomorrow morning. Next up is Michelle Dupree. Hello, my name is Michelle Dupree. I have a senior and sophomore at ETHS. I implore you to reopen Evanston, approve the current plan, and boldly move forward with full and complete reopening this school year and certainly next school year. I understand the unique challenge at ETHS, but with the quickening vaccinating rollout, science research, et cetera, there are so many reasons to reopen. I and my senior daughter are so sad that she won't be able to experience the full brick and mortar ETHS again, not even a graduation ceremony that will be held at a time with much of the population should be vaccinated. However, she is mature, happy, positive, and self-motivated, so e-learning does not equate to no learning for her. My sophomore son, however, does not possess the level of executive functioning, maturity, self-motivation, and computer skills it takes to effectively and efficiently learn remotely. Dare I say that most adults wouldn't be able to handle what these kids have to figure out on a daily basis. The remainder of the comment will be available tomorrow in its entirety in the packet. Next up is Stefano Moreo. I'm writing this note to ask the board to publicly acknowledge the devastating effects that a year without in-person learning has had on some kids. While useful for some, the current after-school activities have done nothing to help others. For kids that are anxious and depressed, there is nothing worse than painting a rosy picture that we are all safe and happy. I'm witnessing firsthand at home now the devastating this message is. I also wanted to say that I find the school message about safety to be poorly formulated and inconsistent. Even though I understand that these are difficult times for everyone, I am very disappointed by the way the administration has handled this crisis and by the lack of oversight on the decisions. Best regards, Stefano Miro. And the next public comment is from Jane Burns. I'm so happy to hear the news that the hybrid plan the students return to school. It is a step in the right direction, but not a large enough step. The students are suffering on many levels, and remote learning is not working. My daughter is a senior, and after being out of school for a year, I'm concerned about her academic performance in college. She has not been challenged and is unmotivated. She's struggling each and every day. I'm asking for the following considerations. Meet with the medical advisory board that has been established by the Reopen Evanston Coalition. These medical experts have expertise and can provide guidance to you and your team. Hold a town hall so we can hear real stories from students and parents. The eTown Live is scripted and does not allow for any communication interaction. Provide a plan for summer school. Thank you for your consideration, Jane Burns. Next up is Annette Petco. Thank you for all your hard work to get your children back to school. These are challenging times, and we are appreciate that you're taking steps to get the students back in the building. We have heard the announcement, and we are very happy to hear that ETHS will be going back to school in person. It's also important for the students to be back in person for many reasons. I also appreciate the opportunity for students who would like to remain remote to continue to do so. As a parent, I would like transparency in the steps to reopening and what plans for the fall are. These are things that I am concerned about. One, the rejection of forming a medical advisory board. There are many pediatricians and medical doctors who are also parents of students who are ready to help with this. Why has a board of medical advisors not been formed? Two, I would like to see the teachers back in the building to show our children that they are serious about going back to school. This would be good for the teachers to get used to being back in the building time. And the remainder of Annette's public comment will be available tomorrow morning. William Voltz is next. Social distancing is and always was toxic to child development, like cutting off an arm to save the body. It's served its grim but useful purpose during a terrible time. Now the time is over. The all-in embrace of e-learning was a soulless, passive, reactive approach to the pandemic. The administration made no genuine effort to solve the problem of how to have a real school during the pandemic. All the grocery store managers figured it out. The board failed as leaders and as advocates for our kids, instead talking all their orders from public health officials who appear to be concerned only with the geriatric population. Even now they are failing. Where's the website where the parents and guardians can upload images of vaccine cards? We, the greater Evanston community, are soon going to form a bubble of immunity around our kids. Collect the data, ETHS. The end is here. Next, and that was by William Voltz, and that was the complete comment. Next up is John Lucas. I'm writing to implore you to consider the damaging effects our children are under with physically out of school. This in-person experience is critical to development at an important age. I know of 3 individuals who have been required hospitalization from this period, not from the physical effects of COVID, but from the mental effects of not being in school or with friends. This is real and long-term problems it's causing are unknown. Please listen to the science, prioritize the children. If teachers feel compromised, let them stay home, and understand that we need teachers who are willing to teach in person. It should be a priority as long as the doctors and scientists say it's safe. On a personal note, I'm in a job where I need to be at work to provide for my family. Others in my line of work have opted out. Our business goes on without them. If I feel unsafe, my alternative is to find another job. It's my choice. And the remainder of that comment will be available tomorrow morning. Need a sip of water. Next up is Steve Brown. Thank you, ETHS, for finally taking a crucial first step in reopening the high school. By taking this step, you will hopefully recognize how important it is for students to have the opportunity to go to school in person. We appreciate the importance of providing the option to students to remain remote, making sure there's no students left behind during this time of transition. That said, the administration and school board approaches means essentially Evanston high school students will get over a year without significant in-person learning, while many neighboring schools have been able to institute much more robust in-person learning scenarios. There are still many questions about the rest of the school year and the upcoming 2021-22 school year. Is the plan to be 100% in-person schedule in the fall, as President Biden announced yesterday? And there will be enough vaccine for everyone by the end of May, or at least this summer? Time. And the remainder of the comment will be available on the website and the board packet tomorrow. Next up is Angela Sangha Gadsden. I hope that each of you, this finds all of your families doing well. This letter support remote learning and teacher plan and volunteer in-person experiences, which was previously implemented by our administration and not the current plan, which implements hybrid learning. I first want to say thank you to the ways my colleagues and I have been offered support through e-learning, instructional training, and wellness initiatives and opportunities. I have felt supported as a mother who, along with my husband, chose until just recently to keep our elementary children home for remote learning for a number of reasons. One mainly is that we offer care for my elderly parents, and the thought of causing them harm during a dangerous and deadly virus that seems to change each day is devastating. I was really thankful that the district prioritized the particular needs of our entire community. I remain incredibly concerned for the research and the data that shows how transmitted and diagnosed, and the remainder of the comment will be available in the packet tomorrow. Next up is Reopen Evanston. On behalf of our 500 members, the Reopen Evanston Schools Coalition is encouraged by ETHS's recent announcement that hybrid learning will begin on April 15th. While this is a necessary and positive step, however, it's not enough kids. Kids have been out of physical classroom for over a year. More and more needs to be done to ensure that kids' needs are being met, that the community understands ETHS's decision-making process, and that ETHS is moving toward providing full-day in-person classes 5 days a week, aligned with the most up-to-date science, evidence, and data. We submit the following request. To build trust and buy-in, please provide weekly live updates of the reopening plan and take questions from families. This transparent, two-way communication will go a long way toward building, and for many, rebuilding trust with the entire community. Since July, and the remainder of the comment will be available tomorrow morning in the packet. Next up is Mariana Romano. To the members of the ETHS School Board, I have been an English teacher at ETHS for close to 2 decades. I am proud to teach in a district that has been unafraid to do the right things, to put our foot down and not cave even to national harassments of people like Rush Limbaugh, who bashed our history curriculum years ago. We stand as a beacon for other school districts that have wanted to grapple with the reality of white supremacy. Yet we are seeming to cave to a loud and connected group without considering our entire community. I feel compelled to speak to power. As a teacher at Evanston Township High School and a parent of a freshman, I care deeply about student and community we serve. The superintendent's recent decision to move to hybrid instruction beginning in April seems ill-advised at the point in the school year. My concern is that my students and my own child aren't going to benefit from the hybrid model and will in fact be harmed by it. Time. And the remainder of Ms. Romano's comment will be available tomorrow morning in the packet. Next up is Andrew Siegel. I write to you today because I am deeply disappointed in Dr. Witherspoon's decision to reopen the school for hybrid learning. Dr. Witherspoon often likes to refer to the school community as a family, yet I believe his actions leading up to his decision are the polar opposite of how to treat a family member. The staff is large part of the ETHS family, and Dr. Witherspoon never asked for our opinions about going back to school for hybrid learning. Had he chosen to question us, as our union did, he would have found that many members of the family have serious concerns about the basic needs like childcare or the lack of fresh air in the classrooms. Why did Dr. Witherspoon not choose to hear from this wing of the family? Why has the school not made an organized effort to vaccinate the staff and keep the family safe? Parents are also a large part of the ETHS family, and I'm a parent of a junior. Time. And the remainder of Mr. Siegel's public comment will be available in tomorrow's packet. Next up is Liz Schulman. I write to you with the urgency of human life, for the human life that will be lost if we return to in-person, and for the level of instruction that will be lost as well. I'm writing to express my support for the continued remote learning model of ETHS that began using last year. It works. The research supports this. To force our students and staff to undergo such a massive disruption to the process that has worked this year will be detrimental to students academically, socially, emotionally. Additionally, many teachers have not yet been able to be vaccinated because the school chose not to partner with a company to ensure all staff received the vaccine. More importantly, the decision to reopen goes against the equity work ETHS has heretofore been so deeply committed to. Please do what is right and protect the lives of students, staff, and families. Let us finish the year humanely and remotely as teachers who have been building the relationships with students under intensely difficult circumstances. And the remainder of Ms. Schulman's comment will be available in the packet tomorrow. Next up is Coley Gallagher. I realize you will be receiving loads of notes, so I'll keep this one brief. I believe District 202 can and should reopen. I hail from a much derided state of Florida where schools have been open since August and case counts have been minimal to non-existent. While the state's educational quality is nowhere near as prized nor as lauded as it is in our area of Illinois, the school has surpassed ours in 2021 by simply offering students their full grade level curriculum in person. The worst part for me as a parent of an ETHS student and someone who knows and cares and hundreds of other students was your failure to go at any lengths to try anything beside remote learning. There was no courage, no initiative. Instead, you waited it out. It seems like you are still waiting it out while in cities and towns all around the U.S., teachers are forging ahead with in-person classroom instruction. And the remainder of the comment will be available tomorrow in the packet. Next up is Dan and Lauren Consiglio. With the recent announcement there will be vaccine available for every American citizen by the end of May, we can certainly commit to having our teachers, secure, and custodial staffs vaccinated by fall. It is beyond time for both districts to commit publicly to a full, safe reopening next fall and to begin transparently listing the steps they are taking to ensure this happens. While the pandemic has exposed many cultural and socioeconomic flaws across the country and in Evanston, those issues cannot and will not be solved overnight. But the clear majority of the people of this city, whether they support or oppose school reopening, have shown in activation at the ballot box they are committed to social change. Our eyes have been further opened to just how badly the change is needed, but to deny the active mental health crisis over the last year in the community of children and the scientific evidence of safe reopening is myopic and dangerous. And the remainder of the comment will be available tomorrow morning. Next up is Joel Sternstein. It's been a lousy year to be a wildcat. Every suburban public high school in Cook County has already figured out to return to school plan, and now at least some of their students back in session. Some districts like OPRF are just as diverse as ETHS. Local private and parochial schools reopened at full attendance months ago. You could have looked at any of those plans and made them a model for the reopening ETHS, and you failed to do so. Under the current plan, there is no regular in-person instruction until April 15th, and then the kids who go back will only be in the building a handful of times before the end of the school year. Our current plan is too little, too late. Change the plan and reopen the building to any student who wishes to attend in person. Other districts, unions, area have figured out a way to get teachers vaccinated. How come District 202 and the Teachers Council have not? And the remainder of the comment will be available in the packet tomorrow. Next up is Steve Ewald. As a member of the community, I am deeply confused over whether Dr. Witherspoon's unilateral decision to drastically overhaul the educational experiences that has been the focus of so much effort in the past 12 months in order to score a short-term win with a small vocal activist group, especially given the comments in prior months regarding hybrid learning and the successes we've seen in a remote period. I appreciate that at least part of this decision is due to his faith in the administration and teachers, as well as a general positivity and desire to move forward. However, all that I have read and heard regarding the practical execution of the switch to hybrid has me concerned that a frustrating but consistent year will end with a cold, chaotic whimper. While being in a building for those unidentified few who opt for it may feel significant, the reality is quite different. Masks, plexiglass, and the remainder of the comment will be available tomorrow in the packet. Next up is Laura Jacobs. Thank you for being the process of America is back to school. It's a crucial first step, but I worry it doesn't go far enough. It leads me to wonder if you really understand the shadow pandemic taking place right now. We're seeing unprecedented rates of depression, eating disorders, self-harming behaviors such as drug use and cutting amongst adolescents today. According to the CDC, 1 in 4 young Americans contemplate suicide last summer, and health experts acknowledge that COVID has amplified what was already a mental health crisis in this country without the resources to adequately deal with it. There's also been much focus on the physical health risk of COVID, and rightly so, but those aren't the only risks. There must be a balance between safety and well-being. We know that how to mitigate the risk of COVID: vaccines, testing, masks, ventilation, better treatment. time. And the remainder of the comment will be available again in the packet. Next up is Lori Keenan. I am writing to support more full reopening of ETHS and increased transparency and initiative for involvement by stakeholders, including caregivers, medical experts, and the students themselves. As a former mayoral candidate, I can tell you that this topic is of utmost concern and importance in our community, primarily for our parents and their students. Over the course of my campaign, I heard from countless families regarding their concerns surrounding this issue, which had the propensity to derail many positive efforts of your work over the past several years, not only as a loss of learning, but social and emotional as well. Our kids are struggling at both ends of the socioeconomic and academic spectrums. My youngest son graduated ETHS last year and spent the better part of the last semester of his senior year doing remote learning, which literally amounted to almost nothing. As a student who suffers from hearing loss and also learning disabilities, and the remainder of the comment will be available in the packet tomorrow. Next up is Chris Miller. The time has come to reopen our schools and let our children back to class 5 days a week. Students do not only learn from a professional teacher, but from each other. Both parents and teachers give our children a solid foundation for learning, but the building blocks the foundation of our children's interaction and socialization with each other. Education is not only from reading books or watching a Zoom classroom session. Real-life education is gained through conversation and debate among each other. Have you thought about how it affects children who are isolated in the bedrooms 4 hours every single day? Their only communication with friends is through a 6x4 device, with the further accelerates their anxiety and stress. Maybe you don't know that teachers are allowing open book examinations. Maybe you don't know that teachers have repeatedly delayed uploading Classroom, causing grades to be posted. And the remainder of the comment will be available tomorrow morning. Next up is Paul Turilli. I'm a parent of a class of 21 student. Thank you for moving forward with ETHS's reopening plan. The plan takes into account the overall safety of students, staff, teachers, and the larger community. I support the plan and the efforts to transition from e-learning to in-person school as soon as possible. I know the ETHS community is ready for this challenging transition with the goal of returning to in-person instruction in August 21, full in-person instruction in 2021. Thank you for your time and consideration. Next up is Laura Jeffries. We were fine. We got through so much with no visible scars. Now we are not fine. My son, who is a freshman, a good-spirited boy, has lots of friends, does lots of activity, even got good grades. But now he is melting. He's melting and doesn't even understand why. His days are filled with nothing. He doesn't have to shower. He doesn't have to change his clothes. He doesn't have to do anything but lie in his unmade bed with his Chromebook open while he is half asleep. He comes down for food and disappears into his hole of nothing. Dirty clothes on the floor, dirty dishes everywhere. A science project on his cluttered desk in between little Lego figurines he plays with during class. And you know what? I don't even have it in me to muster up some great idea to change the scenery. This is the house and our boat is sinking. And the remainder of the comment will be available tomorrow morning. Next up, Patty De La Cruz. First up, I hope you and your loved ones are healthy and well. I wanted to foreground my appreciation for the ways each of you have centered the safety and well-being of ETHS students' families during this challenging year. I'm writing to you today to express my support for the remote learning and teaching guidelines that ETHS has thus far fostered. As a classroom teacher who has journeyed with our students across the remote learning this school year, I believe it is a mistake to gloss over too quickly the accomplishments of our scholars. It is essential to recognize the great capacity of our students, the creativity, the compassion, the resilience. Many have continued to grow as intellectuals, community members, and leaders. As a traditional school year, I have relied upon feedback and knowledge from our students, their parents, and their family members to inform my instruction and facilitate our classrooms. And the remainder of Ms. De La Cruz's comment will be available in the packet. Next up is Valeria Bailey. I'm writing this letter to District 202 board with a heavy heart. We have one daughter who graduated from ETHS in 2020 and a son who's currently a junior. While I could write pages of the social and emotional impact of ongoing school closures had on our son, I will focus this letter on the academic impact. Our son has gone from being highly academically motivated to lacking interest in school, and in particular attending virtual classes at ETHS. While many teachers have valiantly pushed forward, the rules imposed on them by the administration and the union have had a significant negative impact on the level of instruction provided to our children, especially when compared to other cohorts in school districts in Illinois across the country, many managing similar demographics and pandemic related to struggles at ETHS. A lack of academic preparation and college preparation, SAT, AP tests have been appalling, especially for a school once considered the beacon of academic excellence. time. And the remainder of the comment will be available tomorrow morning. Next up is John Stevenson. As we stand on the verge of taking a huge step of going back to some form of in-person learning, we do not stand together. This situation has become so polarized and caused more anger, pain, and division that I've seen at ETHS in my 23 years. Everyone wants to get this right, but the lack of open communication between all stakeholders inherently will make us less safe. Looking ahead, open communication is needed to find the best solutions as we move forward. Why doesn't the ETHS administration proceed immediately reaching out and attempting to gather the thoughts and opinions from everyone involved, parents, guardians in our district, every student in our school, all the teachers, paraprofessionals, and staff members on our building before finalize the plan to come back. Then, with this information, they can lead us back with confidence that we stand together as one. Again, to do so any other way is not safe. The remainder of Mr. Stevenson's comment will be available tomorrow morning. Next up is Sarah Isles. I'm writing as an ETHS parent to the safe and equitable reopening of ETHS for full-time in-person instruction as soon as possible. I believe the community and the board has set a reopening plan that puts safety and equity first. The science and data must guide us. Teachers must be prioritized for vaccinations. We need to listen to those in the community who are most vulnerable. Reestablishing in-person school is critical for the mental, physical, and social well-being of our students. Countless ETHS students are suffering emotionally and academically. I suspect District 202 is able to analyze data and understand how remote school is impacting students across racial, economic, and neighborhood groups. Please let the data guide your plan to reopen with an equitable focus on the students who need help and support. Thank you for your time, Sarah Isles. Next up, John Kennedy Farrell. Greetings, my name is John Kennedy Farrell, and I'm a proud ETHS teacher, a District 65 parent, and an Evanston taxpayer. I started teaching at ETHS in 2016, and the 4.5 years since then, I have come to understand that the most challenging and important work for ETHS to do is to dismantle the ways in which white supremacy and white privilege have negatively impacted our educational system and our community. I've often found reasons to be proud of the leadership with you, along with Dr. Witherspoon, Dr. Campbell, and the rest of the administration have offered this journey. In this challenging work, I think that educators at ETHS have been striving to do this work really well, both in person and in remote setting, which we have had this school year. However, I have serious concerns about the recent announcement to reopen through a hybrid model. I treasure my relationships with my students and colleagues at ETHS, and I've missed seeing them over the past year. And the remainder of Mr. Kennedy Farrell's public comment will be available in the packet along with all of the others. Next up is Stephanie Stern. Thank you for your efforts for this long and difficult year as a community member. I was very happy to hear that high school will be reopening shortly on a hybrid schedule for students for in-person learning. So many students need this option to be successful. Thank you. I hope the board and administration will continue to increase in-person availability as teachers and staff are increasingly vaccinated in the coming weeks. This spring is the opportunity to iron out the logistics, protocol, safety measures necessary to provide a successful full-time or close to full-time in-person option next fall. Over the next 3 months, the district should move in steps cautiously and steadily increase the percentage of students in the building and the amount of in-person hours. If we miss the opportunity this spring to gradually increase in-person instruction, it will make it more difficult, likely unrealistic, to provide the full-time in-person option that so many families are anticipating in the fall. Best wishes, Stephanie Starr. Next up is David Allen. I am a 27-year educator in Evanston, and recently a growing number of local pediatricians, surgeons, and others with connections at editorial boards have begun to lecture me about education, my job, and my role in the community. I'm sure they are good parents and competent professionals, but they should put dialogue before demands. The argument to bring students back in the building they use is a noisy but simplistic and uninformed assumption that in-person learning means life goes back to normal. Schools likely will remember before 3/14/20. Nothing could be further from the truth. With 3,800 students, over 500 staff members, no matter how hard we wish, we can't go back to that ETHS now. So instead, teachers will be brought back to deliver live lessons to significantly less than 25% of their class, the rest of their classes, and that's time. And you can read the remainder of Mr. Allen's public comment tomorrow morning. Next up is Laurel O'Sullivan. I'm the mother of a junior, and I have 2 children that have graduated from ETHS in the past 2 years. It is understatement to say that it has been a challenging year to be a Wildcat mother and an advocate in the community I've lived in for 21 years. While I am very relieved that ETHS is finally opening its doors to students for 1 day a week of in-person learning on April 15th, this is happening after 9 months of virtually no substantive communication from the administration to the parents about reopening. I represent one among many parents that have been sending letters and imploring publicly for more information since July, when the initial reopening plan that was adopted was abruptly rejected by ETHS with no explanation. As a result of this pattern of withholding information and not responding to sincere and urgent requests from families and those struggling, time. And the remainder of the comment will be available in the packet tomorrow morning. Next up, Daria Valensis. Thank you for taking the first step to reopen the high school. While we are encouraged, we still have questions about the rest of the school in the fall. Can you assure us once the teachers and administrators have received the vaccine that ETHS will reopen with full in-person instruction? If not, what criteria will you use to decide to go back to normal? Like many parents, we are concerned about the uncertainty of the reopening plan and would like more clarity and transparency, feeling more engaged in the process. Our kids have been out of school for a year now, and I can say from my personal experiences that they are getting less and less motivated to pay attention and learn, not to mention hurting from the isolation at home. Let's find a way to get together and get back to the classroom and keep everything safe. The CDC and Dr. Fauci assures us it can be done with appropriate planning. Thanks for the consideration. And the next public comment is from Donna and Tim Peretti. We join the tsunami of frustrated ETHS parents and students who want high school to reopen. ETHS students deserve this. For almost a year, District 202 has been out of the classroom. In the time, there's been a void of communication that's left many parents distrustful of the administration. We understand that you need to be flexible in planning and decision making, but we need to have improved transparency. ETHS families are looking for details about planning process of engagement from administrators. We know it's possible. We see it with the neighboring school districts. It's long overdue. I had a difficult year, and we appreciate the hybrid plan, the reopening the high school. We know that students need to remain remote, approach that option. Our students learn best with active in-person learning rather than in front of a screen for 5 hours a day. With nearly a full year of remote learning, our kids have missed so much academically and socially. Time, remainder of the comment will be available in the packet. Next up is Mark Siapik. I just want to be in the classroom in front of my teacher. I just want to play with my friends. That's what my son Jacob, who is a sophomore at Evanston High School, has said multiple times while remote learning rolls past the 1 year mark. His mother is working from home, so poor Jacob has to entertain himself quietly and alone. It has been a lot of video games and TV for the past few months. It's great that ETHS is taking steps to come back in the fall. Hopefully we can have our teens back in school full time. What is happening to kids and teenagers while not attending in class, to their family, to all the children who have been out of school for months? The answer to these questions are complex and may linger for the entire lives of the young population, but the effect does have a name: toxic stress. The concept is relatively new to the health field, but it's bad as it sounds. Toxic stress is repeated, persistent activation of the body's fight or flight response. Time. Remainder of the comment will be available. Next up is Kai Sternstein. First, as a parent of a very proud Wildcat, I wanted to take the opportunity to thank you for taking the first step in reopening ETHS. While I wish we were further along in the reopening process and that this plan you had developed last summer had been initiated in the fall as you had planned, as opposed to almost 8 months later, I wanted to recognize how important it is for you to make the first step, and also that you are allowing students to remain remote, making sure that no student is left behind during this time of transition. Second, I continue to have questions, as I am sure many others in our community, parents, students, teachers, and staff have as well. My personal questions center around metrics being used to reopen and close ETHS, dashboards, vaccinations for staff and teachers, in-person summer school, return to school in the fall, bridges being done with families and kids at risk, their needs, and how the community can help. And the remainder of Ms. Sternstein's comment will be available tomorrow morning. Next up is Kelly Gallagher. Thank you for taking a crucial first step in reopening the high school. I have 3 children at ETHS, and I've witnessed all 3 slowly disengaging with academic school and the importance of an education. In my opinion, the combination of not reopening earlier, as well as a lack of communication around the importance of students and their return to in-school learning, only further contributes to the academic and mental decline every student and their parent is silently navigating. This reopening is a step in the right direction. I think you can tell by the community support around the decision that it was the right one. Our lack of action has created a forgotten generation of wild kids. While we are very encouraged by reopening, there's still a lot of work to be done. All students feel valuable and important. With that said, I encourage you to state whether or not the administration is committed to reopening fully in the fall or take a wait and see approach. And the rest of the comment is available tomorrow. You can read it in the packet. Next up is John Lindner. Thank you for taking an essential first step to reopening the high school. I'm writing on behalf of my freshman and senior. It seems that you've recognized how important it is for students to have the opportunity to go back in person. We also appreciate the ability of students to remain remote and make sure that no student is left behind. So many questions concerning the remainder of the school year and the upcoming 2021 year remain. What COVID metrics are being used to decide safe reopen for the hybrid learning? What metrics will be used to suspend hybrid instruction? Is the school exploring the use of screening tests to track the presence of COVID in the school community? What plans are under consideration for in-person summer school, and how and when will decisions be made? What plans are being made for returning in the fall? What scenarios is ETHS looking at? And how will decisions be made going forward? We understand that you need flexibility, and the remainder of the comment will be available in the packet. Chad and Adrian Groff. We are relieved and excited to see the reopening of ETHS. We have been following the successful and safe school reopenings throughout our state and across the country. We have been watching our 2 high schoolers go to school on their beds for the entire year and feel the reopening is much needed and very overdue. By moving forward the hybrid plan in the spring, we committed you for recognizing how important it is for ETHS students to have the opportunity to go to school in person. Here are how some of our full-time remote learning has gone with our 2 high school boys, a sophomore and a senior. They both lost interest in school, became less motivated on academics, became disconnected from their studies. Their attendance is spotless, but attendance is not engagement. Their GPAs do not capture the fact that they have taken few tests and therefore have not practiced studying, retaining information. They have not had to do presentations or meet deadlines. We worry about their mental health. And the remainder of the comment will be available in the packet tomorrow morning. Kate Mazur is next. Thank you for the decision to reopen ETHS for hybrid learning. The April 15th opening date provides a large window for all staff to continue to receive vaccinations, which supplement other strategies of layered mitigation and increase the safety of resuming in-person school. I remain very concerned about the school's leadership lack of transparency around this issue, particularly its refusal to provide the community with clear information about decision-making processes. For example, a recent report from Duke University-based research group ABC Science Collaborative shows that tracking and evaluating in-school spread is more important to safe school reopening than tracking COVID rates in the community. The report emphasizes the consistency of using a layered mitigation is more important than any other factor in controlling the spread of COVID within schools. Finally, the report makes specific recommendations about screening testing is useful when it is, and it may not be cost effective. Anyway, the rest of that, sorry about that, got choked up at the last sentence. The remainder of the comment will be available in the packet tomorrow. Next up is Peter Slevin. We are welcoming the good news about the declining numbers of COVID infections, the increased availability of vaccines, and the decision of the ETHS administrators to arrange for school teachers and staff to move safely back to the building. That said, it remains disappointing to see how little information is being shared by the District 202 board and the ETHS administration about the metrics being used and the deliberations underway about reopening ETHS in various ways in spring, summer, and fall of 2021. The lack of transparency about the decision-making process during the pandemic is helping to avoid and create confusion, dismay, skepticism, and unfortunately vitriol that could be avoided. I would like to renew a simple request I made at the last board meeting, that ETHS administrators hold a live weekly question and answer session.
Dr. Davis?
Yes.
It is 10:49.
Okay. The remainder of those will be in the packet tomorrow morning. There are 80 total public comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Grab some water. All right. So we're going to go ahead with our agenda. Do I still have everybody? It's like a few people got my board. That's all I need. Okay. So we are at FOIA request. And I see there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 items in the agenda. If no one has questions, I'm going to save Dr. Davis's voice I think that the requests and the responses are in the agenda.
Yep.
So, yes. The next item is board committee reports. Are there any board committee reports that we need to hear? Okay, thank you.
I would just say that the ETHS Foundation held a very successful virtual event, fundraiser on the 27th of February. I think they raised what's posted is close to $110,000 in one night, which was phenomenal. They had an app. They had a wonderful sort of sequence of events all on Zoom that were very impressive, with choir and performances, and Kevin Mack, the board president, and Sebastian Cheeks, who's a junior, sort of playing the MCs. And it was just really, really fun and terrifically successful. So I just wanted to give a shout out to the ETHS Foundation, and thanks to everyone who donated and participated and raised money for the foundation.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. You're right. It was great. Great. It was wonderful. Thank you. Awesome. Okay. All right. Student board report.
Camille. I thought I was going to have to go to sleep and wake back up to do my board report. Oh my gosh. Hello, everybody. So my report today, it's not filled with much. Basically, the student union is doing the same thing we've been doing for the past couple of weeks. Just we have a couple of things that we're trying to change within the school. So we're trying to help communication between administration and students flow a little bit better. Because sometimes, I mean, when you get 10,000 emails a day, of course, that's, we have to do it because FOIA and all that. But a lot of students, they don't check their email, which is an issue, but, we're in a different generation. So we're trying to, create some avenues to send stuff out through Instagram or, social media after it comes out through the email to just kind of reach students with that information better. And then we're also working on, tying into what we were talking about earlier today, like mental health and just how to support students better with that. And giving people, individual days, just trying to figure out how that would work. As for me, it's been stressful. This week's been stressful. I have so many things that are going on at once, and it's all coming down to the end of this year. So it's okay, I gotta, think of all these things at once. So I'm just working on that and feel a little bit stressed, but I see the end of the tunnel. So I'm excited to graduate, and I know the school has some special stuff planned for that. And I'm really ready to finish this year strong. It's been really difficult, and everybody's been fighting. So I feel like, I'm finally going to get the summer, get to let my toes in the water a little bit, and just have fun.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you for that. All right. And superintendent's report, Dr. Witherspoon. You're muted.
First of all, Carmia, thank you for your comments earlier, and thank you for these comments. And as a senior approaching your last quarter, it has to, even during a pandemic, it has to be an exciting time for you. And just allow yourself to feel the excitement. You'll be able to tell your great-grandchildren about surviving the pandemic. So my report's pretty short, but I want to congratulate our ETHS chess team, who finished the season in 12th place in the state tournament. Kudos to our high school's academic challenge team that took 3rd place in the state regionals. Yes, We have chess teams going on. We have academic challenge teams going on. It's just unbelievable all that we are able to offer our students to participate in. There's a fan program coming up this Wednesday evening. It's called Hidden Valley Road, Inside the Mind of an American Family, begins at 7 o'clock. It's a Zoom or virtual program. Our virtual ETHS Career Options Night is going to be on March 17th, and that's at 6 p.m. In the evening, and that's always very well attended. The African American Youth Achievement Award recipients are going to be announced at their program on Thursday, March 18th, which pays tribute to outstanding African American students enrolled at both ETHS and in District 65. Again, always just a really powerful event. The Mayor's Summer Youth Employment Job Fair will be on Saturday, March 20th, 8 to noon. More information will be coming out about that on how to virtually participate, but more than 30 employers will be offering summer employment. Dr. Campbell and I continue with eTown Live, and our next one will be at 8 a.m. on Friday, March the 19th. We also continue to host Wild Kid Academy, and the next Wild Kid Academy is April 10th. And we'll continue to get the word out to our students on that. And finally, a couple important dates to remember. Monday, March 15th is a non-attendance day. In fact, it's coming Monday. And spring break. Yes, Carmia, you even get a spring break, even in a pandemic. And that will be the week of March 29th through April 2nd, resuming on Monday, April the 5th. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Witherspoon. All right, so we're at action items. So the first action item is school board meeting date change in May 2021. There was a change in the date, and I believe that is also in your packets. We moved it up a week. So could I have a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Livingston,
Yes.
Munsell,
Yes.
Parsons,
Yes.
Rolowitz,
Yes.
Buterich,
Yes.
Savage Williams.
Yes, thank you. The next item is the consent agenda, which consists of release for public information minutes of closed session from July 2020 to December 2020 and destruction of closed session tapes, approval of construction bid for literacy lab, approval of construction contract for locker rooms, approval of minutes from February 22nd, 2021, closed session minutes, and February 22nd, 2021, regular meeting minutes. Approval of bills, treasurer's report from January 2021, personnel agenda, which consists of change in status, stipends, requests for part-time from certified, leaves from certified and support staff, resignation from exempt safety, and other suspension of safety. Could I have a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Munsell,
Yes.
Parsons,
Yes.
Rolowitz,
Yes.
Buterich,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Savage Williams.
Yes. Next item is old and new business. Does anybody have any old or new business to present? If not, could I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
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 This meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.